Chapter 395. To shout like that at this time, it would be the center of attention. Bai Shan still wanted to persuade him, but it was too late. A silhouette dashed down the mountain. He didn't fly, but rather, he leaped. Holding two knives bigger than a human, he fanned himself and rushed down the mountain like a bat, his movements extremely fast. Although the crowd did not see clearly who it was, who else could it be other than Yu Qianzhou, who came from the four great families and held such strange knives? All the sects looked at each other, speechless, and felt a little ashamed. So many sects, but no one came out to fight, forcing a guy who could not fly to run and jump down to fight. How could they not feel ashamed? They were afraid that they would not be able to avoid a round of humiliation. Yan Fang's junior brother died, and he wanted to find someone to vent his anger, but he did not expect that the one who came to challenge him was a guy who could not even fly, and looked very young. He was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said, "Is there no one in China?" "Huh, young man, I don't kill nameless people. Seeing that your courage is commendable, I will spare your life. Quickly go back and call your elders." "Hee hee. You don't know me, what a joke." Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up, he did not stop and directly rushed over. "Be careful!" Yan Buguo suddenly shouted from the top of the mountain. The stumbling Yu Qianzhou ran all the way down and was already close to Yan Fang. Yan Fang still did not know the opponent's background and was still laughing. Hearing the warning, Yan Fang looked around and saw that the young man who rushed over did not say anything, but raised his knife and slashed at him. His movements were quite smooth. Yan Fang sneered disdainfully, waved the whip in his hand to block, and said in a deep voice, "It seems that I have to kill a nameless person today." His voice stopped abruptly. The black knife waved, and the snake-like black whip was cut into two. Yan Fang felt his neck cold, and his eyes opened wide in disbelief, but his vision had changed, and he saw his chin on the cold and wide knife. The young man did not hesitate to wave the other knife, and split a headless body in half, and his vision gradually blurred. The whole place was silent. Even the sound of the wind seemed to have quietened down. Only the words of the young man with the saber could be heard. Yu Qianzhou stood with his saber in front of him, looking at the head that had died with its eyes wide open. He said expressionlessly, "So what if he's famous or not? One saber is enough." With a twist of the blade, the head fell off. Yu Qianzhou quickly went over to take the storage bag from the corpse and put it away. Then, he turned around and ran back up the mountain with the two broadswords. What was the point of staying here if he didn't run after the fight? Safety first. When Yu Qianzhou ran back to the four great clans and put away the two sabers, everyone still felt as if they were in a dream. Running down just like that, chopping people down with one slash, then running back, and it was over just like that? Junior brother. A sorrowful howl came from the mountain where Yan Buguo was. The last of the three brothers landed in a flash. Good. The people of the Cultivation Alliance reacted, and immediately cheered loudly. When had they ever seen such a classic battle? Going down the mountain only needed one slash to cut off the head of a mid-stage tribulation passing expert, and then turning back, it only took a moment. It was so cool that they had no words to say. Especially the last sentence, "So what if he's famous or not? One saber is enough." It pushed everyone's emotions to a climax. The applause was explosive, and Ze, who was stunned and then came back to her senses, kept clapping. Looking at the people around her, her face showed a smile that had never been seen before. Elder Bai's disciple was really extraordinary. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou came out in a straightforward manner, cupped his fists, and bowed to the people around him, saying, "I was lucky, I was lucky." What he got in return was even more intense cheers. A consecrator from the 10,000 demons was called Niu Senator. He looked at Yu Qianzhou, and suddenly said to Qiu Wuyuan in a deep voice, "Qiu Wuyuan, he originally wanted to join the 10,000 demons, but you chased him away. After this is over, you can go and ask Yu Qianzhou if he is still willing to join the 10,000 demons." Xiao Wuyuan nodded speechlessly. The people from the supporting Immortals Island were even more amazed, shaking their heads and smiling bitterly. This guy was just wandering around here. How did he come back with a saber in the blink of an eye and kill an expert in the middle stage of the crossing calamity stage? Dongfang Chang Ao recalled the scene of Yu Qianzhou cutting off the long whip with a saber and sighed, "This saber is really extraordinary. I wonder how does that spear compare to it?" In fact, everyone understood that the reason why Yu Qianzhou was able to kill with a saber was because the other party was careless and didn't know his background. He didn't expect that his whip could be easily cut off, so he lost his life. But for the Cultivation Alliance, this was something to gain face, so everyone was equally excited. They were right to think this way, but they didn't think about it. If it was an ordinary person, who would dare to use a saber to kill someone in the crossing calamity stage with a nascent soul stage cultivation? In fact, Yu Qianzhou also thought that he would have to go through a lot of trouble, but he didn't expect that the other party didn't know him, so he made a decision in the blink of an eye: kill him. People who can make such a prompt decision are not as easy as they say or think. An old man in embroidered clothes stood next to Yen Bugue. He had been staring at the purple clothes next to Yu Qianzhou, and suddenly asked, "Is the person with the saber Yu Qianzhou that man who mentioned? Who else could it be other than that rascal?" Yen Bugue stared at Yu Qianzhou and said with hatred, "Yen Fang really underestimated his enemy too much. He was actually defeated so easily. It's not necessarily because Yen Fang underestimated his enemy. If it were me, I'm afraid I would also have made a mistake. It's the first time I've seen such a brave young man, no wonder he's so famous." The old man in embroidered clothes looked at Yu Qianzhou's eyes, revealing a sense of admiration, and asked, "I heard that this Yu Qianzhou also defeated the head of China's Daluo sect, Luo Qingtian. Didn't you investigate his background?" "We did, but there's no way to find out. After this guy was expelled from Fuxian Island, he rarely appeared in the cultivation world. No one knows where he is, but he appeared again recently," Yen Bugue said. "He disappeared for a period of time, but now he appears again, and he even has a treasure that ordinary people can't have." The old man in embroidered clothes looked at the purple clothes, then looked at Yu Qianzhou, and nodded thoughtfully, "I'm afraid it's not that simple." "Murderer, state your name." After the eldest senior martial brother collected his junior martial brother's corpse, he pointed at Yu Qianzhou and shouted, "Mid-stage tribulation passing cultivator, Yen Cheng accepts the challenge, who dares to fight?" This was clearly telling Yu Qianzhou to go down and fight him. "Damn it! With so many people watching, you want me to go down just because you tell me to? Dongfang Chang Ao also killed your junior martial brother, why are you only looking for me? Am I easy to bully?" Yu Qianzhou looked down expressionlessly, pretending that he didn't hear anything. In his heart, he was thinking that Fuxian Island wouldn't give up just like that, and they might even have to rent his spear. "I was stupid just now, I can earn money for free, why should I go down and do such a sinful thing? A bunch of cowards." Yen Cheng was so angry that he started cursing, and the more he cursed, the uglier it became. The more people heard, the uglier their faces became. Think about it, there were so many people here, and there were many people who were stronger than Yen Cheng, but no one came out to fight. This was really embarrassing. The key was that the opponent's whip was too powerful. Although they won the first 2 rounds, even if they asked Dongfang Chang Ao to go up, it would still be difficult for them to beat him. At the end of the day, no sect would be like Yu Qianzhou, running around with precious treasures. At present, they could only deal with the treasures in Yu Qianzhou's hands. Otherwise, they couldn't let Yu Qianzhou wait until they returned to their sects to pick out suitable treasures before they started fighting. The cursing was still going on, but no one came out to fight. Time was also passing, and if no one came out to fight after 2 hours, Yen Bugue would take the initiative to win. Not only would they get 1 billion spirit stones, they would also be able to damage the reputation of the Chinese cultivation world. At this moment, the 10,000 demons' faces were the ugliest. The leader of the righteous sects, Fuxian Island, had won the first round, but as the leader of the evil sects, the 10,000 demons, there was no response at all. After they returned, the prestige of the 10,000 demons in the evil sects would definitely plummet. Xiao Wuyuan was now a little uneasy and restless. He wasn't confident that he could deal with that strange whip, and if he didn't fight, how would the 10,000 demons face their fellow evil sects in the future? His restlessness fell into Yan Bugui's eyes, and a trace of bitterness flashed across Yan Bugui's face. He gritted his teeth and sent a telepathic message to Yan Cheng, who was below. The person who killed your junior brother is called Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu? Yan Cheng suddenly pointed his finger and shouted, "You coward, is Yu Qianqiu?" Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. F***ck. Who told him? He immediately looked around, looking for any suspicious people. He believed that Yan Bugui side, seeing that victory was in sight and that they were about to reap rich benefits, would definitely not reveal his name and let Yan Cheng curse him. Instead, it was very likely that someone on his side was hoping that he would fight, so his name was leaked. His first thought was that he had been betrayed by someone on his side, but in the end, every sect he looked at was suspicious. Forcing me? The more it is like this, the more I won't go. Yu Qianqiu was a little angry. But Yan Cheng obviously had some understanding of Yu Qianqiu's name, as he said all kinds of nasty things. Things like disrespecting his masters, betraying one sect after another as a double surname slave. This challenge had become a war of words. All the sects looked at Yu Qianqiu, wondering how long could he endure it. Ze stared at the people below with a frosty face. It was fine if it was just 1 or 2 sentences, but if he continued to endure it, he wouldn't be able to show his face in the future. Yu Qianqiu finally couldn't listen to it anymore. With a livid face, he stepped forward and shouted, "How dare you shout at me? Are you tired of living? Are you courting death? Yu Qianqiu, come down and fight if you have the guts." Yan Cheng pointed his finger and shouted. "Since you're tired of living, I'll send you down there to accompany your 2 junior brothers." After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking in a cold tone, he waved his hand and a green flying sword flashed out from his sleeve, quickly carrying him into the sky. In the sky, he waved his 2 sleeves continuously, and streams of green light flew out continuously. The 2 sleeves were like storage bags, and no one knew how many flying swords were hidden in them. 1,000 flying swords danced in the sky, and the imposing manner was really shocking. Yu Qianqiu kept his sleeves. So far, with his current cultivation, controlling 1,000 flying swords at the same time was already his limit. Moreover, the green fire element in his body was almost depleted, and even if he wanted to release more swords, he couldn't release more. Chapter 396. The sunlight refracted the green shadows, and the green light flowed endlessly, covering the entire valley, causing the entire valley to sink into a hazy green light. Everyone squinted their eyes at the piercing green light, but they still couldn't conceal their shock. Rumor had it that there was an extraordinary person in the ancient times who could control 10,000 swords at the same time. The rumor was not to be believed, but now everyone had witnessed Yu Qianqiu releasing 1,000 flying swords in a fit of rage. They danced in the air and looked at the vast land like a tiger, wanting to take someone's life. Yan Cheng was dumbfounded as he looked up. He subconsciously felt that he had stirred up a hornet's nest. Yan Bugui and the rest looked at each other, then at Yu Qianqiu who was coldly staring down from the sky. They all had an expression of disbelief. The people of supporting Immortals Island looked at each other. Guiyuan sword technique, 1,000 swords control. Yan Cheng, do you know your crime? Yu Qianqiu's cold voice descended from the sky and reverberated in the valley. The flying swords above his head all stopped. The dazzling green blades slowly adjusted their direction and stared at Yan Cheng below. The black flame machete was able to take someone's life with a single slash. It was impossible for it to happen again. This time, he sent out all the green flame flying swords that he could control. He wanted to have a fair and square battle, to let the entire cultivation world know of his abilities and that he did not rely on luck to establish himself. A nascent soul cultivator was actually questioning a tribulation passing stage cultivator with such a matter-of-fact tone. Everyone was speechless. They didn't know if Yan Cheng could withstand the power of the 1,000 swords. It seemed that these green flying swords were not ordinary flying swords. If it was them. Thinking of the scene of 1,000 flying swords shooting at them at the same time, everyone subconsciously shivered. Ziyi's gaze lingered on the 1,000 flying swords. Her pretty face was filled with excitement. She clenched her fists tightly. From Yu Qianzhou's domineering aura, she seemed to see the shadow of sea nearby. The faces of the 4 major families were filled with solemn respect. The disciple of the old ancestor was not angry, but once he was angry, he would shake the world. What crime did I commit? Yan Cheng smacked his lips and asked dryly. His tone had changed from cursing and arrogant to cautious. When it came to life and death, it was strength that determined the opponent's attitude. Who told you my name? Yu Qianzhou glanced at the surrounding mountains and changed the topic. The moment he said that, the various sects started sizing each other up. In fact, everyone had the same suspicion as Yu Qianzhou. Yan Bugui snorted coldly and transmitted his voice to Yan Cheng. Mr. Yan, you don't have to hesitate. You can tell him that I told you. He had a grudge against Yu Qianzhou, so why would he care about one more dish? Although it didn't matter if he said it, how could Yan Cheng give him up? If he really did that, it wouldn't be a matter of him losing face, but his teacher who lived far away in Xiaoshui country would lose face with him. Thinking of his teacher who had reached the soul formation stage, Yan Cheng's confidence was boosted. He shouldn't be scared by his pretense. No matter how strong a nascent soul cultivator was, how strong could he be? So he waved his whip and shouted, Yu Qianzhou, if you want to fight, then fight. Don't be so long-winded. At the end of the day, he still didn't have enough confidence. Otherwise, he would have made a move long ago and wouldn't have been so long-winded. You really don't know what's good for you. In my eyes, that lousy whip of yours is no different from withered grass and rotten wood. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and raised his hand. I have 1,000 flying swords waiting for you. If you have the cultivation of the final stage of the tribulation passing stage, you might be able to escape from my 1,000 flying swords with your teleportation. Unfortunately, you're not. I'll give you one more chance to live. Tell me the person who said my name and cut off your own tongue. Then I'll let you go. Otherwise, you won't be able to see tomorrow's sunrise. After the battle with Luo Qingtian last time, Luo Qingtian's abnormal speed was so fast that even the flying swords couldn't catch up to him. It could be said that Yan Cheng had gained some experience. This time, the flying swords of blue fire were waiting for him in battle. They weren't afraid that Yan Cheng would escape to the sky. Presumptuous! Yan Cheng shouted loudly. His protective upstanding qi instantly surged out from his body and wrapped around himself. The long whip in his hand rose high into the air and shot towards Yu Qianzhou like a spiritual snake. You're courting death. Yu Qianzhou sneered. He pointed with his finger and dozens of streaks of green light flashed out. Like a jackdaw fighting for food, they surrounded the long whip and tossed it around wildly. Even though the flying swords of blue fire were not as good as the flying swords of blue fire, they were still first-rate sharp. Yan Cheng and his 2 brothers had encountered their nemesis when they encountered Yu Qianzhou. When the black dragon whip and the flying swords of blue fire clashed, it was already pecked all over. The others didn't know, but Yan Cheng immediately sensed it. In his great shock, he made a hand gesture. The black dragon whip made a bam sound and swung its tail in the air. It shook off Guoshi's flying swords of blue fire. It turned around and was about to fly back. Yu Qianzhou sneered. If there was only one flying sword of blue fire, perhaps it wouldn't be able to do anything to you. However, there were 1,000 of them here. A small whip could escape to the heavens. The sword gesture was activated. Dozens of flying swords had already cut off the whip's path of retreat. A group of ferocious fellows pounced forward and pecked wildly. It was practically a standard gang fight. Yan Cheng's face was filled with anxiety. The Black Dragon Whip was the weapon that he had relied on to make his name. Once it was destroyed, it would be easier said than done to find another treasured weapon that was just as handy. His hand gesture was almost a mirage. The whip scurried everywhere in midair. It dodged left and right, shook its head and swung its tail. However, Yu Qianzhou's nimbleness in controlling the flying swords was not inferior to his control of the whip. Once the Black Dragon Whip shook off Guoshi's flying swords, there would be flying swords that were ready to pounce on Guoshi's head, peck at his tail, and pinch at his waist. There was no way for him to escape. He did not allow the whip to escape. He pestered it relentlessly and wrapped it tightly. The divine whip that was previously feared by all the sects was now in such a sorry state. It had no way to escape. Everyone was speechless when they saw this. The people of Supporting Immortals Island looked at each other again and again. Ever since Yu Qianzhou had used the Guiyuan sword technique on Supporting Immortals Island, everyone had actually studied this sword technique in detail. However, the conclusion that everyone had reached was that it was gaudy. They all felt that it was not practical. Now that 1,000 swords had appeared, just this imposing manner alone was already extraordinary. If they could achieve the effect of Yu Qianzhou's usage, even if the quality of the flying swords was not as good as this green flying sword, imagine if someone was entangled by 1,000 flying swords and ganged up on, just like how this whip was entangled. Apart from a few people who possessed great cultivation base, how many people could escape easily? Moreover, Yu Qianzhou's cultivation base was only at the nascent soul stage. If it was a cultivator at the crossing calamity stage who was controlling it, what kind of consequences would there be? Just thinking about it made people feel expectant. They were guarding the treasured sword technique left behind by their ancestors without realizing it. Everyone had made an error of judgment. The people of Supporting Immortals Island suddenly came to their senses and nodded silently at each other. They decided that when they returned to the sect, they would definitely report this matter to the sect leader. They had to pay attention to the Guiyuan sword technique. Yan Cheng was still trying his best to make hand seals, attempting to use his last effort to save the Black Dragon Whip. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the sharp tail of the whip, which was either refined from a beast horn or a beast tooth, suddenly broke off from the long whip. A few green rays chased after it and stabbed it a few times. When they realized that it was useless, they immediately flashed back to join the group and continued to attack the long, black thing. The fang-like tail of the whip fell to the ground sadly. However, it was just the beginning. With it leading the way, the broken whip followed in its footsteps. Yan Cheng felt like crying but had no tears. He stopped making hand seals, and the Black Dragon Whip was dismembered just like that. The victorious green rays seemed to be a little unsatisfied. They flew around in the air for a while. When there was really no target to attack, they obediently returned to their sword positions. When the various sects witnessed this scene, they were speechless. Such a fierce sword technique was simply unheard of and unseen. Today was an eye-opener for them. When everyone looked at Yu Qianzhou again, their gazes were much more solemn. In the past, when they heard that Yu Qianzhou defeated Luo Qingtian, many people did not see it with their own eyes. They thought that it was because of the sharpness of the treasure and luck. Now, everyone clearly saw the word strength. Although the outcome of this battle had not been decided, Yu Qianzhou had such a powerful and outstanding sword technique. There was no doubt that he should have a place in the cultivation world. The contemptuous gazes of the various sects had disappeared. From today onwards, they would look at this young man with a rather bad reputation. Ziyi's eyes were full of splendor. She watched with relish. It seemed that no matter when or who Yu Qianzhou fought, she would not be very worried. Because of her blind worship of Bai Changchun, she had already thought that Elder Bai's disciple should be like this. Yan Cheng looked around a little gloomily. Thousands of flying swords were floating in the valley, ready to attack from all angles, aiming at him inside the protective aura. The cyan sword net completely surrounded him. At this moment, whether it was the Cultivation Alliance or Yen Bugue and the others, when they saw this scene in the valley, they all felt a little ashamed for Yan Cheng. A tribulation-passing cultivator fighting with a nascent soul cultivator was actually trapped to the point that he could not move an inch. It was simply a joke. Yu Qianzhou glanced at Yen Bugue, who was on the top of the mountain, and smiled faintly at Yan Cheng. Although you were the one who provoked me, I have always been a kind person. You are the only one left out of the three of you. I can't bear to kill you. If you kneel down and beg for mercy, I can spare your life. As soon as he said this, several cold snorts came from Yen Bugue's side, echoing in the valley. It could be seen that the person who made the sound had a very high cultivation. That group of people stared at Yu Qianzhou like knives. Yan Cheng was representing them. If he knelt down and admitted defeat, he would not only lose face, but Yen Bugue and the others who took the initiative to challenge him would also be completely disgraced. This was just like if someone from the Cultivation Alliance knelt down and admitted defeat, then the face that the Wuxia cultivation world would be lost even if they wanted to in the future. The people from the Cultivation Alliance also secretly clicked their tongues, thinking that Yu Qianzhou had really gone too far by saying such words. But they didn't know that Yu Qianzhou had other considerations. There were rules in the challenge. If one party admitted defeat, the other party could not kill again. He provoked them with words because he wanted to cut off the other party's way of admitting defeat, and then kill them. He never thought that letting his opponent live was a good thing. Since he had decided to use this battle to earn a name in the cultivation world, then the experience from his previous life told him that it was often more effective to win people over with virtue than to have a fierce reputation. As long as he stood firm, he could slowly accumulate virtue and do good in the future. Sure enough, when Yan Cheng heard this, he immediately flew into a rage. He pointed his finger and shouted, "Yu Qianzhou, don't be so arrogant. You want to force me to beg for mercy and admit defeat with just a flying sword? What a joke!" Clang! As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a green light hit his protective vigor chi like lightning. The protective vigor chi was not damaged at all, and the green light quickly returned to its place. Yu Qianzhou nodded and said with a smile, "Sure enough, you have something to rely on, no wonder. But today, I will let you foreign cultivators learn a lesson. How can the Wuxia cultivation world be a place where you can mess around?" Chapter 397. Hearing this, Yen Bugue was silent, but some of the people around him were livid. The Cultivation Alliance naturally applauded. Yan Cheng snorted coldly. Relying on his protective gang chi, he forcefully knocked away the flying swords that stopped around him, and quickly rushed towards the direction of Yen Bugue and the others. His intention was obvious. As long as he left the valley, he would lose, and the opponent would not chase him anymore. This was the best way to save his life after failing the challenge. Yu Qianzhou sneered. "Sure enough, as I expected, everyone wants to live when they are in danger. You want to run away like this? Fortunately, I planned it first. Otherwise, if you admit defeat in public, I will have to stop." Everyone also saw Yan Cheng's intention. He did not admit defeat verbally, but he wanted to escape. He wanted to save his life, but he did not want to lose too much face. Next, it was up to Yu Qianzhou to make him stay. To everyone's surprise, the flying swords all over the valley did not carry out a fierce attack. Hundreds of flying swords moved with Yan Cheng, waiting for the right moment, and the remaining hundreds of swords wrapped around the protective gang chi that was escaping. Looking from a distance, it looked like a cactus or a hedgehog flying. Yu Qianzhou stopped in mid-air, arms crossed in front of his chest, and stared expressionlessly at the spiked ball. Everyone did not know what he was going to do. Yan Cheng, who was hiding in the protective gang chi, also felt a little surprised. The opponent did not attack forcefully. Although this was good, it made people feel inexplicably uneasy. His worry was right. Yu Qianqiu would not let him go like this. Just as he felt uneasy and sped up to escape, a scorching heat suddenly came from outside his protective upstanding qi. The protective upstanding qi that was connected to his mind almost collapsed in an instant, but the flying swords outside forced him to resist it with brute force. Everyone was surprised to find that Yan Cheng had stopped in the air. Could it be that he suddenly came to his senses and wanted to fight with Yu Qianqiu for the sake of his dignity? Yan Bugui and the rest looked at each other, not knowing what Yan Cheng was trying to do. Glancing at Yu Qianqiu, they realized that he was sneering at them with malicious intentions. Suddenly, they felt that something was amiss. Several voice transmissions rang out in Yan Cheng's ears, asking him what exactly was going on. However, he was currently in a difficult situation, and was circulating his energy to resist with all his might. The scorching heat seemed to be teasing him. When he was just able to adapt a little, the temperature immediately rose a little. When he was barely able to adapt, the temperature rose again. It seemed that it would not let go until he was forced to use his protective upstanding qi. However, he had no treasures in his hands now. Once he left the protective upstanding qi and faced the 1,000 flying swords outside, he would die. Yan Cheng's eyes were red, his skin was bright red, and his 7 orifices were bleeding. Finally, he could no longer bear such torment. He made the same move as the Daluo sect master Luo Qingtian, self-destructing his protective aura shield. Bang! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a loud noise sounded out of thin air. The spiky ball wrapped by the green flying swords was instantly blown into pieces. The airflow surged and a figure quickly sprang out from it. He wanted to take advantage of the impact of the explosion to scatter the flying swords and quickly escape. However, there were only a few hundred flying swords that were blown away by the explosion. The remaining few hundred were already prepared and waiting for him. As soon as Yan Cheng sprang out, hundreds of green cold lights immediately broke through the turbulent airflow and shot towards him from all directions like lightning. Yan Cheng was able to cultivate to the middle stage of crossing calamity, so he was not completely useless. Without the burden of the protective aura shield, when he saw the group of flying swords attacking him, he also went all out. He immediately struck out his palms in all directions like shadows. Bang, bang, bang. He slapped out a powerful force, knocking away the flying swords that were attacking him. He forcefully resisted the first round of attacks with his profound cultivation base. However, there were too many flying swords. Even the green flying swords that were blown away by his self-detonation of the protective aura shield also swept towards him again. Everyone was silent. Looking at the situation, they knew that this master in the middle stage of crossing calamity was making a futile last-ditch struggle. He forcibly consumed his cultivation base to resist, but he could not move an inch. How long could he resist like this? Although they did not know what method Yu Qianqiu used to force him to self-detonate his protective aura shield, since he had arranged everything step by step, they were afraid that he did not intend to let him go. After all, there were too many flying swords. Finally, there was a streak of cyan cold light that slipped through the net. Yan Cheng, who was already bleeding from his 7 apertures, suddenly felt a chill on his back. His body fiercely trembled, and after a slight ferocious expression, an inexplicable sorrow flashed across his face. He saw with his own eyes that a cyan blade had drilled out of his chest, bringing with it a bright red flower of blood. Yan Cheng used all his strength to slap a few times and shouted at Yu Qianqiu in a shrill voice, "Yu Qianqiu, even if I become a ghost, I will not let you go." His mournful voice reverberated endlessly in the valley. It was no wonder that he would say such resentful words. After he died, the deaths of his 3 fellow apprentices were inextricably linked to Yu Qianqiu. How could he not hate? All of a sudden, thousands of flying swords stopped in the air and did not continue to attack. Everyone was surprised. Was this guy going to show mercy? While they were puzzled, they heard Yu Qianzhou say indifferently, "Even if I become a ghost, you will not let me go?" What a joke! I hope you can cultivate until the end of the Ghost King after you become a ghost, otherwise you are not even qualified to see me. I have a word of advice for you. After you become a ghost, you should peacefully reincarnate as a human. This conversation puzzled everyone, but Ze and the people of the four families understood. If a person became a ghost, his resentment would be too strong. It was possible that he would not enter the underworld and stay in the human world. However, the yang qi in the human world was too strong. It was not something that a little ghost who had just become a ghost cultivator could bear. He was afraid that his soul would disappear soon. Even if he could barely survive, how could the cultivators of the human world let a ghost cultivator stay in the human world? The Taoist protector would definitely kill him. At present, the only place suitable for ghost cultivators to cultivate was the demon ghost realm, which gathered yin qi. However, if they wanted to find trouble with Yu Qianzhou in the demon ghost realm, with Yu Qianzhou's identity in the demon ghost realm, it would be a joke if it was not. As soon as he finished speaking, the green light flashed, and the swords swarmed to snatch it. In exchange, a shrill scream was drowned in the bloodthirsty green light in the blink of an eye. As the blood mist spread in the air, a few pieces of ragged clothes were also chased by the green light and turned into dust. Everyone gasped. Not only was this sword technique powerful and fierce, but it was also abnormally vicious. It actually turned Yan Cheng's bones into dust. Not even a piece of his remains was left. The people of supporting Immortals Island looked at each other firmly again. The Guiyuan sword technique could actually be so fierce. It was really a top-notch sword technique for killing enemies. As the smell of blood spread, Yu Qianzhou frowned slightly. He opened his arms and thousands of cold lights were summoned. They split into two green torrents and returned. In the blink of an eye, all of them were absorbed into his sleeves. Immediately, Yu Qianzhou's figure flashed, and he quickly returned to the front of the four families on his sword. As soon as he landed, the green light under his feet also nimbly flicked into his sleeves. The blood mist in the air was blown away by a gust of wind. Ze looked at Yu Qianzhou, who had returned victorious, and clapped her hands excitedly. The applause was abrupt. The atmosphere on the side of the Cultivation Alliance also recovered from the depressing atmosphere. When they remembered that they had won again, they immediately cheered again. However, everyone seemed to have lost the passion from before. The applause and cheers were much more reserved. Everyone looked at Yu Qianzhou with a more complicated expression. From today onwards, no sect would dare to look down on this person. Senior Chang, why didn't you let me shout for Yan Cheng just now? At least he could have saved his life. Yan Bugui asked the old man in embroidered robes beside him. Just now, Yan Cheng was in a precarious situation. When he was about to shout for help, he was stopped by the old man. The old man in embroidered robes replied with a faint smile, "Palace Master Yan, you are now representing the cultivation world of each country. How can you say something like admitting defeat? This explanation is too far-fetched. If I can't say it, can't you say it too? Who knows what you are planning?" Yan Bugui frowned and didn't say anything. The old man in embroidered robes seemed to have seen through his thoughts. He said with a smile, "Although Yan Ji of Shoshui country's rumor sect can't personally come to the cultivation world of China, he has a junior brother named Yan Huan. His cultivation level is quite high. He has reached the peak of the final stage of tribulation passing. It is said that he has reached the beginning of the soul formation stage. If Yan Ji knew that all three of his disciples died here, he would definitely ask his junior brother to come here. Palace Master Yan, do you think it's worth it to exchange the life of a cultivator in the middle stage of tribulation passing for an expert who is close to the soul formation stage?" Yan Bugui pondered for a moment and said with a voice transmission, "An expert who is close to the soul formation stage? Senior Chang, Didn't you say that the world's most powerful cultivator forbade any soul formation stage cultivators to come to the cultivation world of China? If we really attract this expert, will it provoke the world's most powerful cultivator to intervene? No, although Yan Huan's cultivation level is high, he has not reached the soul formation stage. He is not restricted. The old man in embroidered robes' face twitched. Who is the world's most powerful cultivator? Have you seen him before, Senior Chang? Yen Bugui asked with a voice transmission. To be honest, a year ago, Yen Bugui had always thought that soul formation stage cultivators were legendary figures who probably didn't exist in reality. However, in his most critical moment, a group of disciples of soul formation stage cultivators suddenly came to his rescue. This was simply unbelievable. After the incident, both sides reached an agreement to use each other. He also understood the purpose of these people's visit. However, what he was most curious about was what kind of person the legendary world's most powerful cultivator was. How could he make so many soul formation stage cultivators hesitate and really not dare to take a step into China? This was a little unimaginable. He had asked these people more than once, but no one was willing to tell him in detail. It was as if this world's most powerful cultivator was a taboo in everyone's mouth. Hearing this, the old man in embroidered robes went into a trance. That time, he begged his master to take him to the East Sea to see the world. At the time, his master didn't think it was a big deal, so he brought him along. Who knew what happened in the end? It was simply chilling. That person brazenly forced all the soul formation stage cultivators in the world to swear a poison oath. In the end, because he was slightly unhappy, he attacked. After being humiliated, 16 top-level cultivators joined forces to fight to the death, but they all died in the hands of that person. That light green-robed figure was like a nightmare. Whenever he closed his eyes, he would remember that person's cultivation level was so terrifying that he couldn't even imagine it in his dreams. Palace Master Yen, that kind of person is not someone we should be concerned about. Let's take care of the matter in front of us. The old man in embroidered robes said with a changing expression. None of them told the Yen father and son that the reason why the soul formation stage cultivators didn't come was because they were forced to swear a poison oath. There were two reasons why they didn't say it. The first was because they were afraid that the Yen father and son would be scared. The second was because no one would say that their master had been humiliated. Yen Bugui grunted and slightly nodded his head. Out of the corner of his eyes, he caught a slight trace of fear on the old man's face. In his heart, he made up his mind to find a way to understand this world's most powerful cultivator. Otherwise, when the time comes, he wouldn't know he had suffered a loss. Chapter 398. After a long time, no one from either side accepted the challenge. Yen Bugui looked at the people on his left and right. Seeing their hesitant eyes, he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Before this, they were all determined to raise 1 billion, ready to embarrass the Wuxia cultivation world and make a fortune. Now, a nascent soul stage Yu Qianzhou had scared them so much that no one dared to go up. Yen Bugui's guess was right. Except for the two experts at the final stage of tribulation passing, the other dozens of people were indeed quite afraid of Yu Qianzhou. They wanted to go down and accept the challenge, but they were afraid that the guy with 1,000 flying swords would jump out again. Everyone's cultivation was about the same as Yen Cheng and his brothers, so they couldn't be much higher. They really couldn't guarantee that they could win against Yu Qianzhou. No one was willing to risk their lives to try. They could only wait for someone else to come up and then challenge him. On the side of the Cultivation Alliance, seeing that the 3 whip experts had all been killed, and the threat of the strange whip was gone, they were a little tempted. However, they were also worried that these foreign cultivators would use some strange treasures again, so they were a little hesitant. Yu Qianzhou looked around and sneered. They wanted to show off, but they were afraid of paying the price. Every one of them was calculating, and none of them were good. After cursing in his heart, he looked at Zi. Ze was excited and asked, "Do you want me to go up?" Just as Yu Qianzhou was about to nod his head to signal her to make a move, they heard the sound of something flying through the air in the distance. Everyone raised their heads and looked over. A black shadow arrived in the blink of an eye, landing directly in front of the people from the myriad demons' palace. A lean and skinny old man in black slowly turned around with his hands behind his back. His snow-white hair flowed freely behind his back as he stared at the mountaintop where Yan Bugui was at with a glint in his eyes. Before he spoke, the aura of a superior made all the people of the 10,000 demons stand with their hands tied, and they lowered their heads slightly without saying a word. Hiss. Bai Shan took a deep breath and said, "Why is he here? Who is this person?" Yu Qianzhou asked, puzzled. To be able to make the 10,000 demons look like this, the person who came must have a high status among the 10,000 demons. It's Yan Wuchen. He's the previous palace master of the 10,000 demons. Why is he here? Before Bai Shan could reply, many people around him answered Yu Qianzhou's question. This person was known as the most ambitious and ruthless person in the Devil Path, the previous palace master of the 10,000 demons, Yan Wuchen. Now that he had come, it was unknown why he had come, but it was most likely related to his son, Yan Bugui. When Yu Qianzhou heard this, he immediately sized him up carefully. Such a famous figure was the #1 gangster in the cultivation world. Worthy of reverence. Yan Wuchen had been famous in the cultivation world for a long time. He had retired many years ago, so most people had never seen him before. Now that he had suddenly appeared, he immediately became the center of attention. Humph! Unfilial son! Yan Wuchen let out a cold snort. His voice was not loud, but it echoed in the valley, showing his cultivation level. Yan Bugui looked over and was already a little dumbfounded. The cultivators from the other countries also frowned. Yu Qianzhou looked at both sides, and his heart was filled with joy. There was going to be a good show to watch. Wuhan! Yan Wuchen called out coldly. Qiu Wuyuan immediately went over and bowed respectfully. Master! What's the situation now? Yan Wuchen asked. Qiu Wuyuan immediately recounted the entire process of the challenge, pointing at Yu Qianzhou as he spoke. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, everyone saw Yan Wuchen backhand slap Qiu Wuyuan's face. After being slapped, Qiu Wuyuan lowered his head and didn't say anything. Instead, he became even more respectful. Yan Wuchen turned his head and stared coldly at Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou hated people who took advantage of their seniority. He turned his head to the side, too lazy to pay attention to them. He didn't care who they were. That slap shocked everyone. Yan Wuchen really didn't give any face to Qiu Wuyuan. He slapped Qiu Wuyuan in front of so many people. Everyone was stunned when they suddenly realized that Yan Bugui had disappeared. They looked around and found that he was already in the valley. What was he going to do? Late-stage tribulation cultivator, Yan Wuchen is here to accept the challenge. The voice spread loudly in the valley, answering everyone's doubts. The various sects of the Cultivation Alliance looked at each other. They didn't expect that someone like Yan Wuchen, who was rarely seen, would come all the way here just to ruin his own son's reputation. Yan Bugui and the others were livid, especially Yan Bugui, who looked like he had lost his soul. All the cultivators from the various countries stared at the two old men beside Yan Bugui. One was dressed in brocade robes, the other in linen robes. Only their cultivation was qualified to fight against him. But the two of them looked at Yan Bugui with an unreadable expression. Yan Wuchen stood indifferently in the valley with his hands behind his back, quietly waiting for his opponent to challenge him. However, as time passed, no one from his opponent came out. Yu Qianzhou observed the movements of Yan Bugui and the others, and the corner of his mouth curled up. Interesting. If this continued, Yan Bugui's side would automatically admit defeat after 2 hours. It seemed that they could consider splitting the money. Just as the 2 hours were about to end, the old man in linen robes stepped out with a sullen face. Yen Bugue immediately stretched out his arm to stop him, and shook his head bitterly. Senior Feng, no. That's my father. Yen Wuxian glanced over slightly. The old man in linen robes said in a low voice, Palace Lord Yen, you must be joking. You have to understand that if we don't accept the challenge, we will lose 1 billion. This is not a small amount. We can't lose 1 billion just because it's your father. Who has the face to be worth 1 billion? Senior Chang, do you have any good ideas? Yen Bugue turned and asked the old man in brocade robes for advice. Who doesn't have parents? Palace Lord Yen, we all understand your difficulties. The old man in brocade robes paused, and continued, but it's unreasonable to let everyone lose 1 billion just because of your father. This 1 billion is almost all the money we have in our pockets. To us, it's not a small amount. Even if I agree, no one else will. Unless Palace Lord Yen has another way to compensate us for our losses, there's nothing I can do. Yen Bugue's heart was filled with anger. The challenge was caused by you guys. Now, other than the 2 of you who are in the final stage of the tribulation passing stage, the rest of the tribulation passing stage have been intimidated by Yu Qianqiu. Even if the 2 of you fight, who can guarantee that you'll be a match for my father? Now you're asking me to compensate for your losses? If I can really unify the cultivation world of China, then I can let you pick any 2 spirit stone mines and mine them indefinitely. Right now, I can only make an empty promise. If you don't think it's appropriate, then please do as you please. Yen Bugue said in a low voice. He had no choice but to make this promise. If it was someone else, he wouldn't care. After all, he didn't have to pay a single spirit stone. However, it was his own father. No matter how bad he was, he didn't dare to be accused of disobeying his own father. The group of people exchanged glances, expressing their agreement by not speaking. One had to know that a top-grade spirit stone mine could earn tens of millions of upper-grade spirit stones in a year. It would only take 100 years to recoup the cost. To cultivators, 100 years was not too long. But 2 top-grade spirit stone mines would only take 50 years, not to mention that they could mine it indefinitely. It should be a huge profit. The only risk was that even if everyone worked together, they might not be able to help Yen Bugue unify the cultivation world of China. Then, there would be nothing left. But it shouldn't be a big problem. The old man in linen clothes relaxed. The old man in brocade clothes looked at the crowd and smiled at Yen Bugue. Since Palace Lord Yen has put it this way, we naturally can't do anything to make you and your father turn against each other. Sigh. We'll do as Palace Lord Yen says. We shouldn't stay here for long. Let's go. The group of people suddenly left in a hurry. The people of the Cultivation Alliance were all stunned. Then, they all looked at Yen Wuxian who was in the valley. Needless to say, it was because of his father that Yen Bugue could give up 1 billion spirit stones and retreat without a fight. 1 billion spirit stones. He threw it away just like that. What a deep bond between father and son. Yen Wuxian raised his head slightly and looked in the direction of Yen Bugue's departure. He did not move for a long time, the opponent withdrew, and the challenge ended just like that. It was an unexpected win, and no one felt that there was anything to be happy about. Next, what everyone was most concerned about was the ownership and division of the 1 billion spirit stones. That was a large sum of money. The ones who had the opportunity to divide it were naturally the top 10 sects of the Orthodox and Devil sects, and the 4 great clans. As for the other sects who did not contribute money or effort, and instead watched the show for nothing, they naturally did not have a share. The crowd returned to the 100 Flowers Valley. Yu Qianqiu and Zi followed closely behind the 10,000 demons. They had their money in their hands, and they were a little worried if they did not follow them closely. Running away with money could happen in any era. In the Cultivation Alliance, the first thing to do was to follow the agreement from the beginning. Everyone would get back how much they had contributed. Yu Qianzhou happily pocketed his 40 million. Then, he stood guard at the edge of the Myriad Demon's palace, waiting for the distribution. He thought to himself, I've won 2 rounds, so I should get the biggest share. Ze also followed beside him with a face full of excitement, waiting to get the money. The 2 guys who only cared about money were smiling from ear to ear, and they looked quite lovable when they saw them. We agreed before that 1 billion spirit stones will be divided into 20 parts, and each part will be 50 million. Winning 1 round will get 50 million. Supporting Immortal Island won the first round, so they should get 50 million first. Yu Qianzhou won 2 rounds, so he should get 100 million. Senior Yen of the 10,000 demons came out to scare off the opponent, so he naturally won 1 round, so the 10,000 demons should also get 50 million. As for the remaining 800 million, I suggest that we split it according to the proportion of contribution, Zhu Xianxian of the Daluo sect suggested. Not bad, this is considered fair. I agree. The Blood Demon Palace, the Corpse sect, the Moon sect, and some other sects that paid expressed their agreement. Yu Qianzhou silently calculated in his heart, and the smile on his face froze, and his expression suddenly darkened. This doesn't seem right. Qiu Wuyuan looked around at the crowd and said, if it wasn't for my master this time, who knows how long this challenge would have lasted, and who knows what would have happened. It can be said that my master ended the last 17 rounds by himself, so the 10,000 demons should get 17 portions of the money. However, the 10,000 demons will not do something like eating all the money alone. I am willing to give 2 portions to the sects that paid but did not contribute. Chapter 399. Heh, it's true that Senior Yen is an honorable man, but he's only made an appearance once, and he hasn't even done anything yet. Isn't this appearance fee a little too high? Zhu Xianxian looked at the crowd and asked with a smile. Zhu Xianxian, don't be so sarcastic. Qiu Wuyuan glared at him and said, everyone is well aware that if it wasn't for my master's arrival, Yan Bugui wouldn't have thrown down 1 billion for us to take advantage of. Your Daluo sect hasn't even done anything, yet you're already able to take advantage of it. Could it be that you think it's too little? At this time, Yan Wuchen had already gone to rest at the 10,000 demons shop in the 100 Flowers Valley. With his status, he naturally wouldn't come here to fight for money with a bunch of people. However, as a disciple, Qiu Wuyuan naturally had to work hard. The more he got, the more he could demonstrate his master's value. In addition, this was also a fight for huge profits, so he couldn't just give up like that. Your 10,000 demons want to take 15 portions each? Aren't you afraid of bursting? Zhu Xianxian retorted. There was a lot of sarcasm in the surrounding. The sects that had contributed were obviously not interested in Qiu Wuyuan's proposal. If he took more, everyone else would naturally get less. Humph. Those who contribute the most should get more. This logic works everywhere, Qiu Wuyuan said unhappily. Those who contribute the most should get more. I agree with this. Bai Shan of the 4 great clans stood up and smiled at the crowd. No matter how you calculate, you all agree on 20 portions. Have you all forgotten that the 4 great clans also contributed a portion? Moreover, Yu Qianzhou has represented the 4 great clans in 2 consecutive victories. He has contributed a lot. Why don't you all listen to his opinion? He had seen Yu Qianzhou's sour expression earlier. It was obvious that he didn't agree with the distribution method, or rather, it wasn't what he wanted. Thus, he came out to remind everyone. Bai Shan believed that this guy wasn't someone who would easily take a loss, especially when it came to money. Everyone was thinking about their own interests and almost forgot about this great hero. Qiu Wuyuan was taken aback. He looked at Yu Qianzhou and asked, Brother Yu, what do you think? Seeing Yu Qianzhou's dark face, he suddenly had a bad feeling. What the hell am I looking at? Yu Qianzhou threw a tantrum first, then he pointed at the crowd and sneered, when it comes to money, all of you are so desperate that you don't even want to fork out a single spirit stone. You even drag the 4 major clans into this. When it was time to split the money, each of them was even more shameless, wishing that they could put all the money into their own pockets. Today, I've finally witnessed the demeanor of a great sect. Everyone's expressions changed. If it was before, there would definitely be a bunch of people scolding him or teaching him a lesson. But now, after seeing his strength, everyone had to restrain themselves. Bai Shan smiled and took a step back. It was up to Yu Qianzhou to decide whether he would win or lose. He just had to stand up for him at the crucial moment. Xiao Wuyuan frowned and said, "Brother Yu, there's no need to talk about this nonsense. If you have any opinions, why don't you just say it and let everyone hear it? I'm an honest man, I don't have any opinions. I only know that when it came to money, it was agreed that whoever wins more matches will get more money. Those who don't win will not get a share." Yu Qianzhou's expression turned fierce, he pointed his fingers and said loudly, "They fought 3 matches and won 3 matches. I don't care what's going on between Senior Yen and Yen Bugui. Anyway, he's able to scare everyone into not daring to accept his challenge. That's his ability. So, I have no opinion even if Senior Yen wins that match. In other words, there are a total of 4 matches, and the billion will be split into 4 portions. The number of matches won will be split accordingly. There's no need to be so noisy. Of course, if I say this, people will definitely say that I'm greedy. Moreover, everyone has contributed. Fine. I'll take a step back and say that the sects that have contributed will also be counted as a share. The billion will be split into 5 portions. The winners will take 4 portions, and the remaining portion will be split among those who contributed." After the group of people from supporting Immortal Island heard this, they all nodded and didn't say anything. They had the title of the world's #1 sect, and it was really inconvenient for them to compete with others. Therefore, they didn't say anything. According to Yu Qianzhou, if they could get 1/5 of the money, that would be 200 million. It was really not a small amount, and there was no reason for them to disagree. Xiao Wuyuan frowned and pondered. The other sects that contributed were obviously unhappy. According to Zhu Xianxian, they could get 800 million, but according to Yu Qianzhou, they could only get 200 million. The difference was too big. Yu Qianzhou, according to what you said, you want to take nearly half of the money. Aren't you looking down on the sects too much? Wen Zhongping from the Blood Demon Palace said to the crowd with a smile. It seemed like he wanted to use the sects to pressure Yu Qianzhou. "You're old and muddled." Yu Qianzhou's words were shocking. He sneered and said, "How did you say that I'm looking down on the sects? If I had known, I would have hidden in the back and waited to get a share of the money. Why did I have to go out and risk my life? In the future, if the Cultivation Alliance has such a good thing, I will definitely support it. Who doesn't like to get a share of the money without doing any work? I was depressed before. Why didn't the sects accept the challenge? I, a nascent soul cultivator, had to go out and fight with a tribulation cultivator. After such a long time, it turns out that there's such a shady business. I've learned a lot. It's worth learning. Someone dared to steal his money, and it wasn't a small amount. He didn't care if it was the Blood Demon Palace or the 10,000 demons. However, these words of mockery and ridicule really made the various sects somewhat embarrassed. Wen Zhongping was especially embarrassed. He couldn't help but fly into a rage and said, "Yu Qianzhou, how dare you call yourself old man, in front of me? Don't you know that there's a difference in etiquette between seniors and elders in this world? Disrespectful old man, trying to divide the wealth of juniors. Who has ever seen a senior like this? It's fine if a senior like this is disrespectful. The eyes of the world are like torches, and they can tell right from wrong. No one will say that I'm disrespectful, Yu Qianzhou said disdainfully. He thought to himself, practice your tongue. I'll keep you company. How dare you? Wen Zhongping shouted angrily. The people from the Blood Demon Palace all stood up, looking like they were going to fight. The people from the 4 major clans immediately stood behind Yu Qianzhou, opposing the people from the 10,000 demons. Qiu Wuyuan and Quan Deming quickly stepped in between the two groups, trying to persuade them to talk things out. Yu Qianzhou laughed coldly and said, "You want to fight? I've never been afraid of anyone." Back then, the sect leader of Onquangsung, Lu Chongqing, was too much of a bully. I was only at the core formation stage back then, but I still dared to kill him. Now, if anyone else wants to try, why don't you think about it? When the time comes, don't blame me for being ruthless and unreasonable. Everyone smiled bitterly when they heard this. Not only did this guy kill the sect leader of Onquangsung, Lu Chongqing, but he also crippled the sect leader of the Luo sect, Luo Qingtian. Calling him a lunatic was not an exaggeration. Wen Zhongping was furious. Yu Qianzhou, are you threatening the Blood Demon Palace? Yu Qianzhou glared at him coldly and snorted. I'm threatening you, not the Blood Demon Palace. But if you want to drag the Blood Demon Palace into this, I won't object. In short, there's nothing more than reason. We've agreed before that the more we win, the more we get. I've won 2 rounds, so I should take 400 million. That's the bare minimum. If anyone dares to give me less than a spirit stone, try it. I don't care if it's the Blood Demon Palace or the Clearwater Palace. No matter how famous you are, you still have to be reasonable. Otherwise, it's no different from robbery. With such a large sum of money, he definitely wouldn't back down. Everyone looked at each other. This guy openly admitted to threatening Wen Zhongping. It seemed like he wouldn't stop until he got his hands on 400 million. Wen Zhongping would probably lose face in front of so many people, and he wouldn't let this go. Wen Zhongping wanted to use the name of the Blood Demon Palace to pressure Yu Qianzhou. Who knew that this guy didn't have any scruples at all? His words went straight to the face, not giving him any leeway to back down. Just as he was flushed with anger, Zhu Xianxian shouted, "Yu Qianzhou, this isn't a place for you to behave atrociously." He and Yu Qianzhou had an old grudge, and he had lost face because of it. Now, there was a conflict of interest, so he couldn't help but jump out. How am I behaving atrociously? Yu Qianzhou raised an eyebrow and asked, Zhu Xianxian, even though what I said wasn't pleasant to hear, every word I said was the truth. Which part of it was nonsense? Are you going to use the name of the Daluo sect to pressure me? Have you ever seen me afraid of the Daluo sect? As soon as he said this, everyone immediately remembered how Yu Qianzhou killed Luo Xiaofan outside the 100 Flowers Valley and how Zhu Xianxian avoided the battle. Recently, Yu Qianzhou had another fierce battle with the Daluo sect leader, and they really didn't see him afraid of the Daluo sect. These incidents had also caused the Daluo sect to lose face. Zhu Xianxian naturally let his imagination run wild when he heard this. He took a few steps forward, but was stopped by Quan Deming. He couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation and said, Yu Qianzhou, don't try to be eloquent. Do you dare to fight me to the death? Everyone was shocked. Wen Zhongping was originally angry, but he was stunned by these words. He looked at Zhu Xianxian speechlessly and thought, even Luo Qingtian isn't his opponent, and you actually want to challenge him? Aren't you overestimating yourself? Let's just talk. Why do you have to find trouble for yourself? He was sober now. Yu Qianzhou was also stunned. He took out a black machete from his storage bag and stabbed it into the ground. He sneered and said, a gentleman uses his mouth, not his fists. If someone forces me to fight, they should first ask if my 6-foot black blade agrees to it. A murderous chill instantly burst forth from the blade. Everyone quivered. The black fellow's one blade is enough, power was still lingering in the air. Zhu Xianxian's pupils shrank when he saw the blade, and his anger had mostly cooled down. Xiao Wuyuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Everyone, calm down and discuss this properly. Brother Yu, please put away the blade," he said and gave Quan Deming a look. Quan Deming understood and comforted Zhu Xianxian. He pulled him back to his original position, giving Zhu Xianxian a way out. Wen Zhongping was also pulled back by Qiu Wuyuan. Yu Qianchou also turned around to persuade the people from the 4 major families to leave. He turned around and raised his hand to point at the blade. With a solemn expression, he said in a sonorous voice, "Not for money or reputation, but for reason. The blade is fair, and I will not keep it for now. I will set this as evidence. If there is any injustice, Yu Qianchou is willing to uphold justice with this blade. Even if the blade is destroyed and I die, I will not hesitate." His words were very righteous and emotional, as if he himself was the embodiment of justice. Everyone present cursed in their hearts. If we want money but don't care about face, then you want money but don't want to lose face. Why are you pretending to be righteous? If it's money, then it's money. Why talk so much about reason? He's clearly telling everyone that if anyone dares to give him less than a piece of spirit stone, he will fight with them. Isn't this bullying? Chapter 400. The people from the 4 major families looked at each other and thought to themselves, no wonder the great ancestor chose him to be her personal disciple. He's really a talent. Bai Shan looked at Bai Zizong meaningfully, but the latter shook his head and smiled bitterly. Many people from the supporting Immortal Island sighed in their hearts. Such a talent was actually expelled from the supporting Immortal Island. If he was still around, he could take over Dongfang Chang'ao's position and represent the supporting Immortal Island in the cultivation world. He would definitely be able to fight for the greatest benefits for the supporting Immortal Island. The supporting Immortal Island lacked shameless people like him. Qiu Wuyuan's face twitched. He still couldn't understand why Yu Qianchou said he wanted to join the 10,000 demons. He didn't know if it was true or not. Yu Qianchou's face was solemn. He crossed his arms and stood beside the saber. He seemed to be determined to maintain fairness and justice. In fact, everyone knew what was going on. It wasn't as righteous as he made it out to be. In the end, it was all about money. However, no one blamed him now. This was the truth. There were some things that people wouldn't say even if they knew the truth. Once it was said, everyone would be embarrassed. If they were to fight, the consequences would be unpredictable. After all, those who could sit here were not 3-year-olds. There was a price to pay for being impulsive. But then again, if Yu Qianchou didn't possess some strength and dared to cause trouble here, then he would have probably been slapped to death a long time ago. Similarly, if that was the case, he wouldn't have come here to court death. One should do things according to one's strength. Overestimating one's strength would only make one suffer. Retribution would always be on oneself. In the midst of the silence, Yan Wuchen, Niu Sen, Ji Nian, Fan Benlei, and Dongfang Chang Ao walked in together. An aura that belonged to experts instantly covered the entire place. These 5 people were prominent figures from both the orthodox and demon sections. Everyone present stood slightly to pay their respects. The pupils of the 5 people shrank slightly. They saw the saber standing in the middle of the place and Yu Qianchou guarding the side of the saber. What's going on? Yan Wuchen, who was seated at the front, asked in a deep voice as he swept his gaze across the crowd. Qiu Wuyuan immediately went over and explained the whole story respectfully. At the same time, Quan Deming also took the initiative to explain to Ji Nian and Fan Benlei. After understanding what was going on, Yan Wuchen glanced sideways at the few people around him. Then, he stared at the unmoving Yu Qianchou and walked over slowly. Yu Qianchou raised an eyebrow and turned around, just in time to meet Yan Wuchen's bright eyes. He also slowly turned around. Yan Wuchen had always exuded the aura of a superior, and at this moment, it was overpowering Yu Qianzhou, as though he wanted him to submit. However, Yu Qianzhou's eyes narrowed slightly. The experience of dominating an area in his previous life appeared in his mind. The pride that he had suppressed for a long time suddenly burst forth from his body. Two invisible auras of a superior were undoubtedly revealed. One aura that looked down on the world, the other aura that dominated an area. Suddenly, they clashed and clashed. Ordinary mortals might not be able to see anything, but the cultivators present were especially sensitive to auras. They immediately picked up on some clues and looked at Yu Qianzhou in shock. They could clearly sense the decisive and murderous aura of a superior from Yu Qianzhou. It was impossible for someone who had not been an overlord for a long time to have such an aura. This was not something that could be faked easily. It might be able to deceive ordinary mortals, but in the eyes of a cultivator, it would be immediately exposed. At this moment, the scoundrel aura on Yu Qianzhou was nowhere to be seen. His entire person instantly changed. He looked at Yan Wuchen coldly and indifferently, without a trace of fear. In terms of aura, he could completely compete with Yan Wuchen. The people from the four great families did not expect Yu Qianzhou to have such a side to him. Purple Dress was slightly surprised, but she quickly calmed down. How could an ordinary person compare to Elder Bai's disciple? Yan Wuchen frowned slightly. His gaze paused on the black broadsword. He turned to look at the crowd and said, "The 10,000 demons agree with Yu Qianzhou's distribution method." After saying that, he continued walking forward. When he brushed past Yu Qianzhou, he stopped and tilted his head to say, "I heard that little brother is a talent of the younger generation. Seeing you today, you really do live up to your reputation." "Senior Yan, you flatter me," Yu Qianzhou replied indifferently. "I heard that little brother has already accepted Palace Lord Bu's invitation. When the time comes, I will find a chance to have a chat with little brother. Senior, I admire your elegance. It is more than I could ask for. If there is a chance, I will definitely pay you a visit." Yu Qianzhou bowed slightly and said. A negotiation between real superiors did not require too much nonsense. The exchange of conditions was reached with a look and a sentence. The meaning was simple. During the competition, Qiu Wuyuan drove you away. I am now sacrificing a lot of benefits to compensate you. Let's forget about what happened in the past. Courtesy demands reciprocity. The other party had made a lot of concessions, and he did not lose anything. Naturally, Yu Qianzhou agreed. Yan Wuchen nodded and walked into the Cultivation Alliance. Ji Nian, Fan Benlei, and the others also walked past Yu Qianzhou. Dongfang Chang Ao paused for a moment before he turned around and said to everyone, "Supporting Immortals Island agrees with Yu Qianzhou's distribution method." He took a deep look at Yu Qianzhou. The higher-ups of Supporting Immortals Island had long been informed by the sect master not to provoke Yu Qianzhou. Although Feng Xiangtian did not explain clearly, there must be something unusual behind it. After a few people who seemed to be more powerful went in, Qiu Wuyuan and Quan Deming looked at each other, and the latter said in a clear voice, "Does anyone have a different opinion?" All the sects were a little surprised. Why did even Yan Wuchen give in? This is a little strange. At this moment, Yuan Jiokue of the Hexapath Demon sect suddenly said loudly, "The Hexapath Demon sect has no opinion." All the sects were stunned again. Yuan Jiokue was at odds with Yu Qianzhou just a moment ago. Why did his attitude change so quickly? Yu Qianzhou was also a little puzzled. On the other side, Hua Yinue of the Moon Clan also said, "The Moon Clan has no opinion either." Everyone looked at each other. Qiu Wuyuan looked around and said in a deep voice, "If no one objects, then this matter is decided." He naturally supported his master's decision. After a while, still no one said anything. Qiu Wuyuan didn't say anything more. He took out a storage pouch and handed it to Quan Deming of Supporting Immortal Island. Then, he took out 2 storage pouches and handed them to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu took it and quickly counted it with his divine sense. After confirming that there were 400 million, he directly stuffed it into the storage bag. Then, he picked up the broadsword on the ground and put it away with satisfaction. It seemed that he was not going to maintain fairness and justice anymore. The remaining 200 million was divided according to the proportion of the capital contribution. Yu Qianqiu stuffed a few million into his storage bag. Patting his storage bag, he slowly walked to Quan Deming's side and glanced at his storage bag. It was as if he was saying, "Now that you have money, it's time for you to pay me what you owe me." Quan Deming shook his head and bitterly smiled. He took out a bag of holding and gave it to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked at it. 50 million was not a small amount, so he put it away. He didn't say much and casually walked out of the Cultivation Alliance. Everyone looked at him with indescribable feelings. They did not expect that supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons would not get the biggest profit. Instead, they were taken advantage of by him. They made a lot of money. Ze followed him out excitedly. The two of them did not say goodbye to the 4 families and left. 100 Flower House. Yu Qianqiu returned to his room and was about to do some private things. Who knew that Ze would follow him? He asked, "Don't you know that it is dangerous for a man and a woman to be alone in a room?" Ze subconsciously looked around. She did not seem to know where the danger was. She asked weakly, "Yu Qianqiu, how much did we earn this time?" "Nearly 460 million. Why do you ask?" Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, "Do you want to buy something again?" "No, I was just asking," Ze said excitedly. She looked like a money grubber. Yu Qianqiu could not bear to see a beauty like this. He took her hand and sent her out of the room. He closed the door and said, "Go back to your room. Don't run around. Don't disturb my rest." Oh. Ziyi's footsteps could be heard as she walked back to her room. Yu Qianqiu locked the door and windows and looked around the room. After confirming that there was no one around, he disappeared from the room. In Utopia's military camp, Guan Yu looked at the 3 storage bags on the table and clicked his tongue. 500 million. In just a few months, he had obtained 500 million. Were spirit stones in the cultivation world so easy to obtain? How is the consumption of the limit-breaking pill? Yu Qianqiu asked as he lay on the chair and placed his legs on the table. Guan Yu's expression turned solemn as he said, "This limit-breaking pill is truly miraculous. Out of the 800 nascent soul cultivators, we've already created more than 300 early-stage tribulation-passing experts. With this 500 million, it's enough to create the remaining 500 nascent soul cultivators into early-stage tribulation-passing experts in a short period of time. There are already 300? Good, good, good." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. Then, he frowned and said, "Just because their cultivation has reached a certain level doesn't mean that they have the strength of an early-stage tribulation-passing expert. Use the 500 million to raise the cultivation of the remaining 500 people as soon as possible. Then, gather these 800 people together for combat training. Spirit stones are hard to obtain. I need to rely on these 800 people to lay eggs. The spirit stones of the 10,000 people behind us will depend on these 800 people." Guan Yu nodded. When he thought about the scene of 800 well-trained tribulation-passing experts being dragged out together, he could not help but gasp. He had organized combat training for a long time, so he could imagine how terrifying it would be if these people gathered together to fight. If Yu Qianqiu wanted to do something heartless, the consequences would be unimaginable. "You have to keep a close eye on my 2 disciples and Gu Qingyun. When their cultivation reaches the tribulation-passing stage, throw them into the combat training field and harshly hone them. It would be best to treat them as hypothetical enemies in the army and torture them to death. Of course, don't really kill them. It doesn't matter if they are beaten half to death. At most, they can come back after they have recovered. Yu Qianchou said lightly. They are your disciples. You really have the heart to do that. Guan Yu said hesitantly. Yu Qianchou shook his head and said, it's not that I don't have the heart to do that. It's precisely because they are my disciples that I have to be strict with them. It's better to sweat and bleed than to lose their lives when the time comes. Chapter 401. In the Cultivation Alliance of the 100 Flowers Valley, Yan Wuchen and the other experts at the end of the tribulation passing stage had already left. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. Over the past few days, it was rare for him to have such free time. Yu Qianchou was bored, so he basically hid in his room and studied the jade archives that recorded the rules of the star chart circulation. He wanted to comprehend the remaining 3 star charts as soon as possible. In the vast sea of stars, the star paths were complicated. Perhaps it was because he was anxious for quick results, but it was difficult for him to calm down. He was deep in thought, but he was unable to connect the dots. As for Ze, she had just experienced the prosperity of the world. How could she stay alone for a long period of time? Yu Qianchou simply let Wu Licheng and the other 3 bring her around so that she wouldn't keep sneaking into his room, which would disturb him even more. For the next few days, the 4 of them made Ze very happy. They had a lot of fun. Actually, Yu Qianchou could tell that the 4 of them seemed to be interested in Ze, but he couldn't really say anything about it. A daughter of a family was sought after by hundreds of families. Whoever could pursue her depended on their ability. Everyone was on the same side, so there was no need for him to stop them. With his thoughts on his mind, he stopped in front of the window. Suddenly, he saw Bai Shan and the other 3 rushing into the 100 Flowers house. He knew that they were probably looking for him. Sure enough, not long after, there was a series of footsteps and a knock on the door. Yu Qianchou said, "Come in." After Bai Shan and the other 3 entered, they bowed in unison and greeted, "Mr." Yu Qianchou turned around and smiled, "Why are you all in such a hurry? Is something the matter?" The 4 of them looked rather solemn. Bai Shan nodded and said, "The people that the Cultivation Alliance sent to the Eastern Sea to keep an eye on Yan Bugui have sent news. This morning, several hundred flying artifacts filled with people landed on the Wuxia island. I'm afraid that the foreign cultivators are already prepared to make their move." "So soon? I'm not ready yet." Yu Qianchou frowned. Bai Shan continued to say, "The Cultivation Alliance has gathered all the people in charge of the various sects to discuss this matter. The 4 of us have already been notified by the elders that the 4 great families will follow Mr.'s lead and follow Mr.'s decision. Mr., please represent the 4 great families in this Cultivation Alliance convention." Yu Qianchou was slightly startled. He waved his hand and said, No, this responsibility is too great. I can't bear it." He knew what the 4 great clans were thinking. They wanted to tie him to the 4 great clans, and their target was naturally Bai Changchun. It could be said that they had sacrificed a lot and put in a lot of effort. However, if a great battle were to break out, his advantage was to be flexible in the dark. He couldn't fight head-on. If the situation was really critical, he could run away and hide at any time. Dragging the 4 great clans with him was not a burden, but it was definitely inconvenient. The strength of the 4 great clans was not weak, but now was not the time to be greedy. "Sir." Bai Shan still wanted to persuade him, but Yu Qianchou waved his hand and interrupted, "Don't say any more. I'll tell you the truth. This time, my master has entrusted me with something else. I'll just follow along and play with some things. If I get too involved, it will affect my own matters. If my master gets angry, no one in the world can bear it." He simply used Bai Changchun as a shield. The 4 of them looked at each other. Bai Shan asked, "Sir, can you tell us what it is? Perhaps the 4 great clans can do something for the great ancestor." "I can't say that. Yu Qianzhou smiled and refused. The four of them begged again, but Yu Qianzhou wouldn't agree no matter what. In the end, the four of them had no choice but to leave. They had to report this matter to the four great clans as soon as possible. After the four of them left, he stood by the window and pondered for a long time. In the end, he went downstairs leisurely. He took a table, ordered some free food, and slowly enjoyed it alone. It was really leisurely. The shopkeeper of the 100 Flowers house was speechless. He had never seen such a righteous person who ate and drank for free. He didn't know how long he was going to stay. Just as he was enjoying his wine, Xiong Hui came in from outside the shop. He glanced inside and saw him. He quickly walked over and smiled. "You're in such a good mood. I volunteered to invite you. Give me some face and come with me to the Cultivation Alliance first." "Invite me?" Yu Qianzhou was startled. "Invite me for what?" "The lone cultivators nominated you to be their representative. You'll represent them to participate in the Alliance conference." Xiong Hui smiled. "Nominated me to be their representative? What a joke. I don't even know them. Tell them, I won't do it." Yu Qianzhou refused without saying anything. He subconsciously felt that there was a conspiracy. He had just rejected the four great clans, and now there was a group of lone cultivators. Who knew them? "That's good. Why don't you go? Others can't even beg for it." Xiong Hui felt strange. "Good?" Yu Qianzhou's hand paused. He asked, "What's good about it?" "The fact that the lone cultivators recommended you means that everyone recognizes your strength. They believe that you can protect their interests. That's what everyone wants. Isn't that a good thing?" Xiong Hui said matter-of-factly. Yu Qianzhou was still doubtful. Xiong Hui cupped his hands and said, "Yu Qianzhou, just give me some face and go. I've said in front of Elder Quan that I'll definitely invite you. If you don't go, I'll be laughed at." After begging and pestering, Yu Qianzhou finally couldn't resist his begging and was kicked out of the 100 Flowers house. On the way, Yu Qianzhou said solemnly, "I'll see what it is first. If it's a thankless task, tell them to find someone else as soon as possible. As long as you go, I'll be able to report. Even if you turn around and come back, it's none of my business." Xiong Hui smiled. Yu Qianzhou looked at him in surprise. He had a look that said, "You're so cruel." He didn't know when this guy became so smart. He used to think he was stupid. Actually, there were only a few hundred lone cultivators who joined the Cultivation Alliance. Their cultivation levels weren't too bad either. At the very least, they were at the core formation stage. Those with low cultivation levels were still worrying about earning spiritual stones for cultivation. They didn't have the time to think about how to integrate into the upper class of the cultivation world. Even if they had the intention, they might not even be willing to look them in the eye. Outside the Cultivation Alliance, Xiong Hui led Yu Qianzhou to more than 600 lone cultivators in different clothes. There were men and women, old and young, and their cultivation levels varied. Yu Qianzhou glanced at the crowd roughly and found that many of them had higher cultivation levels than him. With a puzzled expression, he cupped his hands and said, "I'm Yu Qianzhou. Although I'm also a lone cultivator, I don't know why I'm chosen to be the representative of the lone cultivators." The group of people looked at Yu Qianzhou with awe. This was the guy who had caused a stir in the past. A few days ago, he even killed 2 cultivators in the middle stage of the tribulation passing stage. It was said that he had taken a big bite out of the big sect's hands. It was said that he had 400 to 500 million. When had such a powerful lone cultivator appeared in the cultivation world? Not only did he steal from the big sect's mouths, it was said that he had also publicly threatened the other sections. Even the old devil, Yan Wuchen, had to give him face. As a fellow lone cultivator, who else could we recommend if not you? If it were someone else, we wouldn't be convinced. At this time, a man with a thick beard came out and cupped his hands. "Mr. Yu, we are a part of the Chinese cultivation world. Now that the Chinese cultivation world is facing a foreign invasion, we are willing to do our best. However, although we have this intention, the other sects may not take us seriously. You have a high cultivation level and are famous in the cultivation world. Both the righteous and demonic sects have to give you some face. With you as the representative of the lone cultivators, I believe that the big sects will not look down on us because of you. At least, they won't let us be wronged for nothing. Therefore, we recommend you to be our representative. If it were someone else, I, Hong Ming, would be the first to be unconvinced. Yes, if it were someone else, we wouldn't be convinced. Please don't refuse, sir, we believe in you." The group of people chattered. "So that's how it is." Yu Qianzhou looked at the crowd thoughtfully. If the sects were the regular army, then these people were the guerrillas. It was hard to refuse such kindness. Could it be that I have to be the guerrilla leader again? Guerrillas were good. If they could win, they would fight. If they couldn't, they would run. Most importantly, they had more freedom. They could also find an excuse not to fight head-on. This representative was worth it. Since you all think so highly of me, I have no reason to refuse. Shall I give it a try? Yu Qianzhou said. Thank you, sir. The bearded lone cultivator, Hong Ming, was the first to reply. The others also echoed him. It was not orderly at all. They were indeed the characteristics of lone cultivators. Yu Qianzhou frowned. The words unorganized and undisciplined appeared in his mind. However, he did not say anything and nodded to Xionghui. Xionghui led him into the Cultivation Alliance. As soon as they entered, they saw hundreds of sex representatives surrounding the flat ground, discussing non-stop. The big sect sat in the center circle. Bai Shan was also among them. However, he did not see anyone else from the four big clans. Bai Shan was probably the representative of the four big clans. Xionghui reported to Quan Deming and retreated. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianzhou. They had a strange look on their faces. This guy had become the representative of lone cultivators in the blink of an eye. Yu Qianzhou did not care about that. He grabbed a futon and threw it on the ground. He sat on the outermost circle. The small sex representatives on both sides subconsciously moved to the left and right. Although he was the representative of the non-mainstream lone cultivators, he was a person who liked to be in the limelight. Ordinary small sects would not dare to provoke him. The sects continued to discuss. Yu Qianzhou did not say anything and listened quietly. It turned out that the problem of manpower and financial resources had been solved. In terms of financial resources, the Cultivation Alliance would send people to supervise the sect's spiritual stone mines. Half of the output of each spiritual stone mine would be supplied to the Cultivation Alliance. In terms of manpower, the righteous sects would be led by supporting Immortals Island. The demonic sects would be led by 10,000 demons. The allocation of resources between the righteous and demonic sects would be coordinated by supporting Immortals Island and 10,000 demons. It seemed that when the sects faced the threat of life and death, the previous problems were no longer a problem. They were quickly solved. As for what happened after that, Yu Qianzhou listened to it. It was all about the righteous and demonic sects preparing for war. There was also the issue of spiritual stone distribution. No one talked about the lone cultivators. This was a good thing, but since so many lone cultivators had joined the Cultivation Alliance, why didn't the lone cultivators get a share of the activity funds? As the representative of the lone cultivators, if he did not fight for it, who would fight for it? He had just taken office, and he was not given any funds. This was clearly a slap to his face. Yu Qianzhou's face darkened. He slowly stood up and said in a low voice, "I have an opinion." Chapter 402. Everyone turned to look and were slightly stunned when they saw that it was him. They did not know what he had to say, but his expression did not look too good. Qiu Wuyuan rubbed his head, feeling a headache coming on. It was fine if this guy did not speak, but once he did, it was hard to imagine what he would say. His opinions were always hard to bear. Why did he always feel helpless every time he met this guy? He sighed and asked, "Brother Yu, why don't you share your opinions with us?" Yu Qianzhou cupped his fists expressionlessly and said, "I'm not sure if everyone knows, but I'm fortunate enough to be the representative of the itinerant cultivators who are temporarily residing in the Chinese cultivation world." Everyone looked at each other. Bai Shan frowned and thought, "You're not willing to be the representative of the 4 major clans, but the representative of the itinerant cultivators. What's the meaning of this?" Qiu Wuyuan nodded and said, "Of course we know about this." "What are you trying to say?" "I want to ask everyone. Every sect has a share in the distribution of the spirit stones. Why aren't there any for the itinerant cultivators? They are also willing to do their bit for the Chinese cultivation world. Why do you have to treat them differently? This seems to be unfair. I hope everyone can consider the itinerant cultivators and allocate a share from the budget." Yu Qianzhou said solemnly. "For money again?" Everyone was speechless. Qiu Wuyuan looked around and said, "This money was gathered from the daily mining of the spirit stone mines by the various sections. It is only natural for it to be returned to the hands of the various sects when it is needed. Wandering cultivators did not contribute a single spirit stone, yet they have to take a share. This is indeed a bit unreasonable. Brother Yu, you're making things difficult for us." "That's right. That's right. How can we split the money without contributing anything?" The sects roared in agreement. "Everyone, please listen to me." Yu Qianzhou cupped his fists at everyone. After the discussion died down, he continued, "I, Yu Qianzhou, have always been the most reasonable person. I would never do something so unreasonable. Itinerant cultivators were weak in the cultivation world. It was impossible for them to occupy famous mountains and great lakes to mine spirit stones like the various sects, so where would they get the money to hand it over? They had always lived and died on their own. In order to survive, they often did despicable things, so the other sects did not care about them. To put it bluntly, no sect thought highly of them. Even so, but..." Looking around, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and pointed outside. He said emotionally, "Right outside, those unaffiliated cultivators who you don't like joined the Cultivation Alliance without hesitation when they heard that the cultivators of Wuxia are in trouble. They are willing to sacrifice their lives for the cultivators of Wuxia at any time. Their selflessness can be proved by the sun and the moon." Yu Qianzhou. Qiu Wuyuan couldn't bear to listen any longer, and couldn't help but interrupt. Then, he looked at the reactions of the various sects, only to see that they weren't moved by his words at all. The expressions on their faces were very strange, and it was clear that they were thinking the same thing as him. "Brother Yu, just tell me how much money you want. But let me make it clear first, if you ask for too much, we won't give you any more." Qiu Wuyuan was too lazy to beat around the bush with him. If he really went around in circles, who knew where he would end up, and the loss might be even greater. Yu Qianzhou's expression softened a little. It was fine as long as he gave money. For such things, if you did not ask for it, they would not give it to you. You would only have a chance if you asked for it. No matter how much it was better than nothing. Therefore, he nodded in relief. "Actually, they never asked me, their representative, to make any requests to the Cultivation Alliance. But I feel that with a stable source of spirit stones, the hearts of the people will be stable, and it will be easier to command. Senior Qiu, there are more than 600 people outside. How about 100 superior-grade spirit stones per month for each of them?" "You're crazy." Qiu Wuyuan was almost roaring. "I, the palace master of 10,000 demons, can't even get 100 superior-grade spirit stones per month. You want us to give each of them 100 superior-grade spirit stones per month for a group of lone cultivators? Yu Qianzhou, you've gone too far. The criticism from the various sects came one after another, and it was simply the anger of the crowd. Yu Qianzhou was stunned for a moment before he reacted. In recent years, he had gotten used to earning a lot of money, and he had almost forgotten that each faction's money was also accumulated over many years. He had never heard of anyone receiving more than 100 high-grade spirit stones in a month, not even 50 high-grade spirit stones. Some sects even distributed low-grade spirit stones in a dozen low-grade spirit stones. Of course, the people with high positions in the various sects could use a lot of spirit stones, but it was completely different from receiving them according to the rules. Damn it! I've broadened my horizons too fast, and I almost forgot the days when I was poor. How shameful. Yu Qianzhou said awkwardly, please calm down, everyone. I was too quick with my words, and I misspoke. I said 1 superior-grade spirit stone as 100 superior-grade spirit stones, please don't misunderstand. I think you're so rich that 100 superior-grade spirit stones are nothing to you, right? The Luo sect's Zhu Xianxian couldn't help but say. When everyone heard this, they looked at Yu Qianzhou in deep thought. This guy was young, but he had a lot of money on him. Just the money he had gotten in this period of time, 100 upper-grade spirit stones was not even a drop in the bucket. Zhu, what do you mean by that? Yu Qianzhou glanced at him coldly, and his tone darkened. He raised his eyebrows and said, I've said something wrong, and I've already apologized. Are you trying to pick a fight with me? If so, just say it, I'll play with you anytime. Zhu Xianxian was also a dignified De Luo sect's representative. After being provoked in front of everyone, how could he bear it? Even if he could bear it, he couldn't. If he didn't put on an act, he would be humiliated by Yu Qianzhou again and again. How could he face others in the future? He immediately jumped up from the cattail hassock, and Quan Deming, who was beside him, immediately pulled him back. This was something that everyone had expected. Yu Qianzhou, don't be so arrogant. You'll get what you deserve sooner or later. Zhu Xianxian roared, still unwilling to give up. The various sects' representatives shook their heads. What happened in the past was already in the past, and a little humiliation should be tolerated. Since you can't win against him, why can't you control your mouth? Aren't you just looking for trouble? Yu Qianzhou sneered, don't worry, if I really get what I deserve, I'll definitely kill you first. Hearing this, the group of people sitting cross-legged looked at each other speechlessly. They sighed inwardly. The current Yu Qianzhou was no longer the Yu Qianzhou of the past. Not to mention Zhu Xianxian, as long as he had a saber in his hand, how many people would dare to challenge him? They didn't manage to kill this brat back then, but now that this brat had made a name for himself, and his momentum was growing, it wouldn't be easy to deal with him again. All right. Don't talk so much. Can't you see the situation now? We're here to discuss a solution, not to quarrel. Qiu Wuyuan shouted. The way he looked at Zhu Xianxian was clearly telling him that he asked for it. The way he looked at Yu Qianzhou was complicated. If the 10,000 demons really recruited this brat, they didn't know if it would be a blessing or a disaster. No matter where he went, he would get into trouble. Those loose cultivators were really ruthless. They actually pushed this brat out to be their representative. Who knew what trouble he would cause in the future? Quan Deming helplessly pushed Zhu Xianxian back to the cattail hassock, then looked at Yu Qianzhou and said, Yu Qianzhou, it's impossible to get 1 top-grade spirit stone. Only the disciples who are always ready for battle can get 1 top-grade spirit stone every month. The loose cultivators that you represent have not been assigned any missions yet. How can they enjoy the same treatment as the disciples who are always in danger? You keep saying that it's fair, but do you think it's fair? That didn't seem right. Yu Qianzhou scratched his nose and said, Elder Quan, there are at least tens of thousands of disciples from all the sects who are ready for battle, and I only have about 600 people here. One spirit stone per person, that's only about 600 in a month. Compared to the huge financial resources of the entire Cultivation Alliance, this is a small amount. Do you think you can make an exception? He still wanted to fight for it. No matter how big their financial resources are, they're still prepared. Once the war starts, the consumption of elixirs and instruments will be huge, and they need to spend a lot of money to purchase them. Also, a large amount of money is used as a reward, and it's not something that can be given to anyone, Quan Deming explained. If it was someone else, they would have been thrown out long ago. Who would have bothered to bargain with him and explain so much? Then how much can you give? Yu Qianzhou frowned. Quan Deming and Xiao Wuyuan exchanged a look, and Xiao Wuyuan looked at the crowd and shook his head. Since these 600 individual cultivators are also members of the Cultivation Alliance, I suggest we reduce the spiritual stones given by half, and give them 50 mid-grade spiritual stones. What do you guys think? After a month, it's only about 300 top-grade spiritual stones. I think it's acceptable. Quan Deming nodded. I think it's acceptable too, Bai Shan, who represented the 4 major families, said. Hua Inua from the Moon Clan also said it was acceptable, followed by Yuan Jiokue from the Six Paths Demon Clan. Everyone couldn't help but look at Yuan Jiokue. The first 2 families were still understandable, but since when did the Six Paths Demon Clan stand on Yu Qianzhou's side? Yu Qianzhou was also a little puzzled. What did this old guy mean by showing his goodwill so many times? The other sects wouldn't start a feud with Yu Qianzhou over a mere 300 spiritual stones in front of him. The matter was passed almost smoothly. Although the money was a little less, Yu Qianzhou had his own plan, so he didn't argue too much. Just as he was about to sit down, he heard Xiao Wuyuan say, Yu Qianzhou, since those individual cultivators have enjoyed the benefits of the Cultivation Alliance, they have to be restrained by the Cultivation Alliance. They are not like the disciples of other sects, and they are used to being alone. If the situation is critical and they are needed, can you restrain them? Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou straightened his back and said with a cold tone, I have never forced them. But since they pushed me to be the leader, it's too late for them to not be restrained by me from the moment I stepped into this place. If one doesn't listen, I'll kill one. If 2 don't listen, I'll kill a pair. If worse comes to worst, I'll kill them all. Hearing this, everyone's heart trembled. This madman might really do something like that. At first, they thought that those individual cultivators were cunning and pushed him to be the leader. Now that they thought about it, many of them were going to be in trouble. Just as everyone was thinking, Yu Qianzhou suddenly changed the topic. He looked around and said proudly, it won't be long before you see these 600 individual cultivators will be like an invincible army. Wherever I point, they will fight. There is no question of not being restrained by me. You will see. Chapter 403. Hearing this, everyone was stunned for a moment before they smiled. It was a fool's dream to command a group of rogue cultivators as an army in the secular world in a short period of time. Not to mention rogue cultivators, even among the disciples of the various sects, how many of them had the spirit to sacrifice themselves and put their lives in the hands of others? This matter was passed off as a joke, and no one cared about it. They continued to discuss the issue of coordination and command between the various sections. Yu Qianzhou sat at the back and listened to him obediently. The various sects seemed to be trying their best to avoid the issue of rogue cultivators. From the beginning to the end, no one proposed to assign tasks to the rogue cultivators. In reality, no one wanted to provoke him, lest this guy ask for money again if they were to get involved. Although it had nothing to do with him, Yu Qianzhou listened very seriously. After the discussion, he was the first to walk out of the Cultivation Alliance. Outside the door, a group of rogue cultivators had not left. They were chatting idly while waiting for him. As soon as they saw him come out, they immediately quietened down and looked at him, hoping to hear some good news. Almost everyone present was the best among the rogue cultivators, but rogue cultivators were rogue cultivators. In the cultivation world, they were like the poorest people in the secular world. They yearned to integrate into the upper class of society, but it was extremely difficult. Therefore, they hoped to use this opportunity to gain the recognition of the various sections. Yu Qianzhou paced back and forth on the steps outside the door. After thinking for a while, he stopped and looked at the crowd with a faint smile. Just now, some of you questioned me as the representative of the rogue cultivators. You're afraid that I won't be able to restrain you at the critical moment. Although I've already patted my chest and promised, I still want to know the truth from everyone. Are you really willing to follow my orders? If not, it's not too late to regret it now, lest something unpleasant happens in the future. Yes. Many people shouted without hesitation. There were also many people who looked at each other and hesitated for a while before reluctantly shouting the word yes. It seemed that there were many people who wanted to make use of Yu Qianzhou, but there were probably not many who were willing to listen to him. Coincidentally, there were people from various sects coming out from the door. When they saw this scene, they all shook their heads and left with a smile. The meaning was clear. A rogue cultivator was a rogue cultivator. Yu Qianzhou took in the expressions of the rogue cultivators. His eyes narrowed and a hint of sharpness flashed across them. He smiled and said, "It's good that everyone is willing. There's something I want to tell you." Originally, the Cultivation Alliance's budget of spirit stones was only given to the sects that had contributed money. None of you had contributed money, so you didn't get a share. However, under my efforts, the Alliance agreed to let us enjoy half of the disciples of each sect who were preparing for the war. Each of you can receive 50 mid-grade spirit stones per month. Although the money is small, it has nothing to do with us for the time being. If there is a need for us in the future, I will definitely fight for it for everyone. I will not let anyone suffer a loss. Everyone's expression was a bit gloomy. The Cultivation Alliance obviously did not treat them the same as the disciples of the other sections. Amidst the silence, a woman's voice suddenly grumbled softly, "I thought what would happen if I pushed him to be the representative. I didn't expect it to still be like this. Then why should we be controlled by him?" Then a man reprimanded in a low voice, "Shut up. If you have something to say, go back and talk." Everyone looked towards the two who spoke. Yu Qianzhou heard the voice and looked over. In the crowd, there was a man and a woman who seemed to be a couple. Both of them had a cultivation level of the late core formation stage. The woman's clothes were revealing more than half of her full breasts. She had quite an enchanting charm. The man's face was fierce-looking and fierce. The two of them were avoiding Yu Qianzhou's gaze with flickering eyes. What a full and charming stunner. Yu Qianzhou clicked his tongue. His gaze was unscrupulously lingering on the woman's breasts. Then, he walked down the stairs towards the two. The people in front of him made way for him. When he arrived in front of the two, he looked at the woman and asked with a smile, "I wonder if this beauty is already taken?" His gaze was still constantly taking advantage of her. When everyone heard this, they were stunned. They didn't expect that this Yu Qianzhou was also a lecher. At first, the two of them panicked. They thought that Yu Qianzhou wanted to do something. They didn't expect him to say something like this. After the woman recovered from her shock, an amorous expression appeared on her face. Her bright eyes were watery as she looked at him. The man's face was filled with shame and anger. He looked at Yu Qianzhou in front of him as if he was trying his best to suppress his anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "Mister, please behave yourself. We are dual cultivation partners." "Oh. So that's how it is." Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. He looked at the man and smiled, "I said before that if you don't want to listen to my orders, it's not too late to regret it. Otherwise, something unpleasant will happen in the future." However, someone just said that he was willing, but in the blink of an eye, he changed his mind. He's clearly playing with me. What do you think we should do with people who go back on their words? The woman already felt that something was wrong. She subconsciously retreated. The man quickly cupped his hands and said, "Mister, please forgive me." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted him. He pointed at the woman and said, "Kill her, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, we'll die together." The loose cultivators looked at each other speechlessly. This guy was going to kill someone if he was unhappy. Everyone slowly retreated, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. The man's expression changed. He and the woman both retreated. Suddenly, a cold light flashed from the storage pouch on their waists. The two immediately jumped onto their flying swords and tried to escape. Yu Qianqiu stood expressionlessly. In an instant, dozens of green lights shot out from his sleeves. With a hissing sound, they tore through the air and chased after the two of them. Ah! Two screams were heard. The green lights flashed in the air and two clouds of blood mist appeared. With Yu Qianqiu's current cultivation, he didn't even care about the middle stage of the tribulation passing stage. How could two cultivators in the late stage of the core formation stage be a match for him? He killed them easily. Along with the shrill screams, many people immediately dashed out from the cultivation alliance. Qiu Wuyuan, Quan Deming, and the others came out just in time to see the end. Dozens of green lights returned from the sky and slipped into Yu Qianqiu's sleeves. What happened? Quan Deming asked one of the disciples guarding the door. The disciple immediately told him what happened. Qiu Wuyuan, Quan Deming, and the others looked at each other. This guy really didn't hold back. Previously, he told them to kill one person if they didn't listen. If they didn't listen, he would kill both of them. The group of loose cultivators grieved. Many of them secretly regretted recommending Yu Qianqiu to be their leader. They didn't know what would happen to them in the future. It was too late to back out now. However, in the following period of time, Yu Qianqiu's actions greatly surprised everyone. He spent a sum of money to prepare a one-piece black suit for every loose cultivator. He even specially embroidered the word "loose cultivator" on the chest. Usually, he led everyone to tour around the 100 Flowers Valley every day. He called it unified training, but in fact, everyone just had to follow him to play. Every day, he left early and returned late. When he returned to the 100 Flowers Valley, he paid out of his own pocket and treated everyone to good wine and food for free. The group of people was confused and didn't know what he was doing. In the end, they were too lazy to think about it and simply followed him. After all, they didn't have to pay out of their own pocket. Therefore, a group of masked people could be seen in the 100 Flowers Valley every day. Not only were they masked, but the word embroidered on their chests told everyone who they were. Such an unusual action naturally attracted the attention of various sections. They all secretly sent people to investigate. In the end, they found out that this group of people was so bored every day. They were either hunting in the mountains or catching fish in the rivers. They were completely mystifying. In the end, they were too lazy to send people to investigate. Anyway, it was a group of loose cultivators. Let that lunatic do whatever he wants. As long as they didn't cause any trouble. Ze also didn't understand what Yu Qianqiu was doing. After playing with them a few times, she also felt bored. It was more fun to be with the 4 people who flattered her every day. Therefore, she went further and further with Bai Zitsong and the other 3. In the beginning, they didn't return for 1 or 2 days, but now they didn't return for several days. Yu Qianqiu didn't care about her. He still led a group of masked loose cultivators to train. Half a month later, Yan Bugui's side began to launch a few probing attacks. Several small sects were wiped out by them. The Wuxia cultivators immediately made a decision. They couldn't be passive. They had to take the initiative to attack. The people of the righteous and devil sects were urgently mobilized. After setting up defenses in some important places, a large number of elites began to gather, preparing to attack Yan Bugui's lair, Wuxia Island. In the headquarters of the Cultivation Alliance in the Hundred Flowers Valley, except for some representatives of various sects, almost all the people who could be used were transferred away. The only one who didn't move was Yu Qianzhou and his group of loose cultivators. However, they also received a mission that was almost not dangerous. That was to help defend the headquarters of the Cultivation Alliance. On the day they received the mission, the people of the Cultivation Alliance who should leave had left. As usual, Yu Qianzhou led a group of loose cultivators to wander around. After arriving at a remote valley outside the Hundred Flowers Valley, Yu Qianzhou looked around and gathered everyone together to give them a lecture as usual. After giving his lecture, he continued to circle around this group of people who were standing in a disorderly manner with a smile. However, today was the day he had been planning for a long time. Something was destined to happen. He went around to the back of the hundreds of people. His smile suddenly became strange. He faced the crowd and opened his 5 fingers. A divine sense instantly shrouded everyone. Everyone immediately felt that something was wrong. When they came to their senses, the surrounding scene had changed. It was the same valley, but not even a blade of grass grew. Around them, there was another group of masked people holding Dharma artifacts. However, there was no word "loose cultivators" on their chests. They had already surrounded them. The only one who didn't wear a mask was a red-faced, long-bearded man in green. The man with an extraordinary bearing sat on an unusually strong horse. He stroked his beard and said in a deep voice, "You have all been surrounded by me. Give up the meaningless resistance and I will spare your lives." Where is this? How could this be? Who are you? The group of loose cultivators looked around in confusion. They didn't see Yu Qianzhou. In a panic, they quickly took out their Dharma artifacts and prepared to defend themselves. Guan Yu's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. He raised his hand and waved. Without saying a word, the masked people around him each took out a handful of astral breaker talismans and threw them out. Bam, bam, bam. There was a loud explosion. The strong airwave shook the group of loose cultivators. Screams could be heard everywhere. Then, like wolves entering a flock of sheep, the masked people around them started a crazy massacre. Chapter 404. Yu Qianzhou. Why? Someone screamed before he died. The rogue cultivators who had fallen into chaos were awakened by this scream. Everyone suddenly realized that they had been eating and drinking for free all this time just to numb themselves. No wonder they couldn't figure out the reason. They didn't expect the price to be so high that they had to pay with their lives. All kinds of curses were directed at Yu Qianzhou. The number of people on both sides was similar, but it was a completely oppressive massacre. A rogue cultivator released a flying sword to counterattack, but it was immediately shot down by the opponent's flying sword. Before he could react, he felt a chill in his back, and a flying sword pierced through his chest. Another rogue cultivator wanted to escape on his sword. As soon as he rose up, he felt a chill in his waist. His upper body tilted and was separated from his lower body, and his intestines flowed out. The surrounding masked men were all at the crossing calamity stage. They cooperated seamlessly with each other, attacking and defending at the same time. They attacked mercilessly. The group of rogue cultivators didn't even have a chance to escape. In an instant, they collapsed. Cries of grief and indignation suddenly sounded, and then suddenly disappeared. If it weren't for the corpses everywhere in the valley and the strong smell of blood, no one would believe that the surprise attack ended in such a short time. As soon as the battle was over, the masked man quickly cleaned up the battlefield. The storage pouches and various magic tools were quickly picked up. The corpses were also quickly piled up. From the beginning to the end, no one made a single sound. Everything was carried out in silence. Yu Qianzhou suddenly appeared beside Guan Yu. Looking at the team members in the valley cleaning up the battlefield in an orderly manner, he nodded slightly and said, "My efforts were not in vain. There were more than 600 people. Why did you kill them all? You could have used them for your own purposes." Guan Yu got off the horse and asked. Red Rabbit seemed unwilling to witness such a bloody scene, so it turned around and galloped away. There are many reasons. I don't need to explain them one by one. Yu Qianzhou said indifferently, "I wanted to use these 600 people to test the effect of your training. This is one of the reasons." Guan Yu frowned, and his gaze moved from him to the team members in the valley. After the masked team members gathered the corpses, a few of them took out fire talismans and threw them out, preparing to destroy the corpses. With a buzz sound, a raging fire ignited, and the bloody corpse was engulfed in flames. Thick black smoke began to rise, and a burnt smell filled the air. Yu Qianzhou's nostrils flared, and with a wave of his hand, a green fireball landed on the corpse. The green flames exploded, and quickly engulfed the red flames. The rapid rise in temperature forced the masked men in the surroundings to retreat. Not long after, the fire was extinguished, and the corpses were all turned into ashes. The team members quickly formed into two teams. The two leaders of the team rushed over and handed 2 storage bags to Guan Yu. Inside the bags were the spoils of war they had just collected. Guan Yu took the storage bag and looked at Yu Qianzhou. Seeing him nod, Guan Yu immediately turned around and shouted, "Change." The two leaders flashed back, and all the team members immediately moved. They took off their masked clothes and stuffed them into the storage bag. Then, they took out another set of masked clothes from the storage bag and put them on. After they were done, the words, "Rogue Cultivator," were written on their chests. There were also 600 people, and they were exactly the same as the 600 people who had just been massacred. However, their aura was completely different. They lined up neatly and stood solemnly. Yu Qianzhou stepped forward, looked down, and waved his arm. "Special Battle Team 1st Battalion, Special Battle Team 2nd Battalion, remember, your profession is a soldier. A soldier's profession is to never stop fighting. I have painstakingly trained you all for this moment. Today, you will officially follow me into battle. Perhaps, this road will be filled with thorns, danger, and death, but I believe that you are the one and only soldiers in the cultivation world. You can overcome all difficulties and obstacles, and the outside world will become more wonderful because of you. We pledge our lives to follow the leader. Long live the leader! Long live the leader!" All the team members shouted at the top of their lungs, and their voices echoed in the valley for a long time. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and pointed in the direction of Utopia's military camp. He said loudly, "There are close to 10,000 soldiers in Utopia. You are the first batch of members to officially follow me into battle. You are also the first batch of soldiers who have used the limit-breaking pill and spent a large amount of spirit stones to create. You bear the heavy responsibility of helping the latecomers to break through to the tribulation stage. Are you ready? Invincible! Invincible!" All the team members were impassioned. "I don't think that every cultivator can live forever, but..." Yu Qianzhou suddenly waved his arms and shouted, "I can guarantee you that your bloody battle today will give your future generations a land without oppression and exploitation in Utopia. Those with outstanding battle achievements. A monument will be erected in Utopia and passed down to future generations. Long live the leader! Long live the leader!" All the team members shouted again. After mobilizing everyone before the battle, Yu Qianzhou looked at everyone affectionately. Then, he waved his hand and shouted, "Let's go!" More than 600 team members disappeared, leaving Guan Yu alone to look at the empty valley. After a long time, Guan Yu whistled, and Red Rabbit galloped over. He mounted the majestic horse and looked in the direction of Ethereal Palace for a long time. Then, he galloped straight for the military camp. In a hidden valley outside the 100 Flowers Valley, Yu Qianzhou and a group of team members quietly appeared. All the team members observed their surroundings warily. With a wave of Yu Qianzhou's hand, hundreds of well-trained team members immediately spread out and conducted a carpet search. After confirming that they were not being watched, they returned and gave him an "okay" gesture. Yu Qianzhou nodded in relief. He took out 2 jade archives and handed them to the 2 battalion commanders of the Special Forces. He said, "This is a detailed map of the area outside the 100 Flowers Valley. The 2 battalions are to be divided into 60 squads. Look for favorable terrain to hide outside the 100 Flowers Valley. Try your best to form an encirclement. Take note. You must ensure that the communication between squads will not be cut off. If anything happens, you can respond to each other. Also, there are some things to take note of regarding your current identities in the Jade Archives. Read them carefully." "Understood." The 2 battalion commanders replied. Yu Qianzhou continued, "If you're discovered while you're hiding, you can tell them my name. Tell them that you're my men. If anyone still insists on provoking me after knowing my name, kill them on the spot." "Alright, carry out the order." "Yes." The 2 team members saluted, then quickly returned to their squads with the Jade Archives in hand. These 2 Jade Archives were personally drawn by Yu Qianzhou while he was touring around the 100 Flowers Valley with a group of rogue cultivators. He had prepared them specifically for today. Once the plan was issued, the 600 team members split up into squads and spread out in all directions, hiding among the lofty mountains and lofty ridges. The long sword on Yu Qianzhou's back popped out. Stepping on it, he leisurely flew into the 100 Flowers Valley. He shook his head and hummed a Peking opera tune. "I was admiring the mountain scenery from the city tower when I heard the commotion outside the city." Banners fluttered in the air, but it turned out to be the troops sent by Yu Qianzhou. Under the twilight, he entered the 100 Flowers Valley. Many people found it strange when they saw him. Where had all the masked rogue cultivators gone? Every time, more than 600 people would return. It was truly a majestic sight. Why was there only one person left now? Ignoring the gazes of the crowd, Yu Qianzhou returned to the 100 Flowers residence. He went upstairs and pushed open Ziyi's room. He realized that she hadn't returned yet. It had been 4 to 5 days since she last returned. He couldn't help but frown. He hoped that nothing bad had happened. Otherwise, Nongzhu would fight him to the death. Thinking about it, he felt relieved. With the heirs of the 4 major clans accompanying her, even if something happened, the 4 major clans would have their own ways of finding out immediately. For chasing one. He wondered if there would be a son-in-law that Nongzhu fancied among them. Ugh! If Old Man Bai's descendants chased after Nongzhu's daughter, what would happen to their seniority? Would Nongzhu have to follow the 4 major clans and address Old Man Bai as her ancestor? Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but laugh at the thought of what might happen. He shook his head and went downstairs again. He ordered free food and drinks. Leaning against the window, he looked at the rising lights in the market and drank alone. Now that he had calmed down, he seemed to realize that something was missing. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that the stubborn girl was missing by his side. Bang! There was an explosion in the distant sky. Yu Qianzhou, who was a little absent-minded, suddenly became alert. He looked back and was slightly stunned. A splendid firework bloomed in the night sky with enchanting colors. Then, a few more slowly rose and exploded in the sky one by one. Someone actually set off secular fireworks in the 100 Flowers Valley? What a refined mood. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and smiled. He raised his glass and drank a little, enjoying the fireworks with the wine. The crescent moon that appeared behind the fireworks was particularly lonely. There was a river below the fireworks. The heirs of the four major clans kept taking out fireworks from their storage bags and placed them on the riverbank. Ze held a burning incense that flickered in her hand. She lit up a bunch of colorful flames and couldn't hide the excitement on her face. The brilliance of the sky and the brilliance of the reflection on the river echoed from afar. It was indeed a romantic scene under the night sky. These fireworks were bought by the four of them when they went to the secular world for fun. They were the kind of one-eyed salutes that could climb very high after being set off. They didn't know how many they bought, but the four of them kept placing them on the ground for Ze to light. Many people in the 100 Flowers Valley were attracted by the fireworks. Gradually, many people gathered to watch from afar. Now that the war in the cultivation world had just begun, the atmosphere was tense. The sudden sight of this made people feel much more relaxed. "Miss Ze, try this one." Bai Zizong held a firework that was as thick as a thigh and placed it on the ground. Ze took a new incense stick that Wu Liqing had lit up. She excitedly walked over and lit the fuse at the base. Bang! Even the ground slightly trembled. A bowl-sized ball of light rushed out and shot straight into the sky. Bang! It exploded, and the gorgeous colors spread across the sky. The expressions of the people below were also clearly illuminated. So it's these guys. After Yu Qianzhou ate and drank to his heart's content, he saw that the fireworks were still going off. He put his hands behind his back and came to see who had nothing better to do after eating. He didn't expect to see the four young masters sucking up to Ze. "So beautiful," a woman murmured from the side. Yu Qianzhou turned his head and looked. Coincidentally, a firework exploded and light shot everywhere. The woman's face was right in front of his. When they saw each other clearly, they were both stunned. Chapter 405. Yan Zixia. Yu Qianzhou. Both of them were stunned. They didn't expect to meet under such circumstances. Then, they looked at each other and smiled. An indescribable feeling lingered between the two of them. Yu Qianzhou smiled awkwardly. Back then, on supporting Xian Island, he was lonely, so he picked her up. His hands touched her all over, touching all the places that she shouldn't touch. It felt good. Then, both of them left supporting Xian Island. When they met again, he purposely avoided her. So, although both of them were in the 100 Flowers Valley, they didn't see each other. Yan Zixia's faint smile was mixed with some bitterness. She could naturally feel that Yu Qianzhou was purposely avoiding her. Now that they met again, she wanted to ask why, but she didn't know how to ask. Bang! The fireworks exploded, releasing a gorgeous light. Both of them saw each other's faces clearly again. Not talking wasn't a solution. Yu Qianzhou touched his face and smiled awkwardly. "Why are you here?" "I saw someone set off fireworks, so I came to take a look." "What about you?" Yan Zixia asked. "I also came to take a look." Yu Qianzhou smiled. Their conversation was simple and empty. Then, both of them fell into silence. They looked awkwardly at the place where the fireworks were set off. After a long time, Yan Zixia suddenly asked, "Is the woman who set off the fireworks the lady in purple dress who was with you? Do you know her?" Yu Qianzhou asked. "I don't." Yan Zixia shook her head lightly. Who doesn't know Yu Qianzhou's name in the cultivation world? Who doesn't know that Yu Qianzhou has a lady in purple dress with unfathomable cultivation? You two are Dao companions? We're dual cultivation Dao companions. Yu Qianzhou was stunned, and he hurriedly waved his hand and said, "No, no." He thought in his heart. That little girl probably doesn't even know what it means to go to bed now, dual cultivation my ass. He pointed at Ze and the four young masters and said, "Can't you see anything?" When Yan Zixia heard this, she took a closer look and smiled. She could also tell that the 4 successors of the 4 great clans were pursuing Ze. If Ze was really Yu Qianzhou's Dao companion, how could he just stand there and do nothing? Turning her head, she smiled sweetly and said, "That lady in purple is also a stunning beauty. She has been by your side for a long time. Could it be that you have never been moved? Why did you allow others to pursue her?" Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly and shook his head. He thought to himself, that girl's father is not easy to deal with. It's better not to touch him. Besides, I already have a few good women. I'm already satisfied. Yan Zixia looked at him in a daze. The little disciple of supporting Immortals Island back then had already risen to fame. Could he continue his fate? Recalling the past, he couldn't help but ask, "You owe me something. Do you still remember?" Yu Qianzhou was stunned. "What do I owe you? It seems like you have forgotten." Yan Zixia looked at the sky and waited for a firework to explode. She smiled bitterly and said, "You promised to compose a song for me. If you really forgot, then forget it." Yu Qianzhou was speechless. Thinking about it carefully, he did casually promise her back then. He almost forgot about it. He didn't expect her to remember it. Dong, 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 dong. While the two of them were speechless, suddenly, a melodious sound of a zither could be heard. Even the bang-bang of the fireworks couldn't cover its penetrative power. It clearly spread across the wilderness. It was obvious that the person who played the zither injected true essence into it. The two of them couldn't help but look at each other. They were just talking about a song and someone was playing the zither. Wasn't it too much of a coincidence? The people who were watching the fireworks looked towards the source of the sound. On the other side of the river, under the cold moon and the brilliant fireworks, there was a beautiful woman in a red dress sitting on a giant rock that had been standing for God knows how many years. Her face was covered by a red veil, and there was a zither on her crossed legs. Her fingers were as delicate as jade, and the melodious sound of the zither could be heard. Although they couldn't see her face, judging from her demeanor, she must be an enchanting beauty. The people whispered to each other, not knowing where this mysterious woman came from. The few people who were setting off the fireworks stopped. The night sky returned to normal, and only the sound of the zither could be heard. Ze looked at Bai Zitsong and the other 3 people with a questioning gaze. The latter shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know who it was. I am a fox that has been cultivating for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of loneliness. In the dead of night, can anyone hear me crying? In the dim light, can anyone see me dancing? The woman plucked the strings of the zither and hummed a rhythm. Her voice was faint and moving, and it echoed across the wilderness. "Isn't this the song you composed?" Yan Zixia turned her head and asked. "Huh? Oh. I think it is," Yu Qianzhou stuttered. His facial expression kept twitching. It was so interesting. The others couldn't tell who the woman was, but he could. Even if he couldn't see her, he could tell from the voice. Who else could it be other than his master's wife, the enchantress of 100 charms? He just didn't know why she came here to play the zither in the middle of the night. Ze was suspicious when she saw the woman, but when she heard the song, she couldn't hide the surprise on her face. Although she didn't know much about the world, Nongzhu was a master of music. Having been influenced for so many years, she could naturally tell the good from the bad. It was the first time for her to hear such a melodious and popular song. After singing a few lines, a sad story appeared in front of her. "Isn't this song from Onquangsung, White Fox?" Bai Zitsong looked at the woman under the moonlight and frowned. Ze asked, "You mean the song is called White Fox?" "I don't know, but many people say so." Bai Zitsong smiled. Ze nodded and said, "It's a very appropriate song name. Miss Z.E., you probably don't know yet. It's said that this song was composed by Mr. Yu. Tan Fei smiled and said. You mean Yu Qianqiu? He can compose music? How is that possible? Z.E. was shocked. Then she shook her head and denied the rumor. Ever since she had known Yu Qianqiu, she had never seen that he had any talent in this area. It should be said that the man's words and actions were not even close to his ability to compose music. If he had half the demeanor of his master, she might have believed it. In short, it was impossible. In fact, this rumor had been around for a long time. But no one could imagine that Yu Qianqiu, who was known as a scum and a madman, could compose music and play the zither. Wu Liqing thought about it and couldn't help but laugh. He shook his head and said, it's just a rumor after all. Rumors may not be true. I also don't think Mr. Yu would do it. There's also a song called Dream of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies. It's also a rare classic. It's said that it was composed by Mr. Yu. If it was really composed by Mr. Yu, then, hee. Before Jing Zhuo finished his sentence, he and the others started laughing. They all thought it was a joke. Dream of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies? Is it better than White Fox? Do you know how to sing it? Z.E. asked curiously. Just as she asked, the woman on the other side of the river finished her song. The melody of the zither changed. After the first song, another style of song was sung. Yesterday was like the flowing water in the east, far away from me. Today, my heart is in chaos, so much worry. Maybe it was because the song was really good, there were many fireflies flying around her in the silent night. They danced around her, adding to the beauty of the song. Jing Zhuo smiled and said, Miss Z.E., didn't you want to listen to Dream of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies? Here it is. Z.E. heard him and opened her red lips slightly. Her eyes looked at the other side of the river. She was completely immersed in the melancholy melody and forgot to reply. The Enchantress of 100 Charms had extraordinary attainments in music. She played the rhythm of the song in a captivating manner. The listeners on the other side of the river were listening to her singing quietly. Yu Qianqiu's eyes kept darting around. He didn't know what she was trying to do by doing this. Suddenly, his eyes met with the Enchantress of 100 Charms, and a trace of slyness flashed across the latter's eyes. Yu Qianqiu felt that something was wrong. She might be targeting him, but he did not know what she was trying to do. When the song ended, the crowd heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, the melody changed again. Although it was not as familiar as the previous two songs, the helpless feelings that came from the other side of the river were enough to stir people's hearts. Under the moonlight, the red lips moved and sang, "Don't talk about the past. Life is full of ups and downs. Even if you can't erase your memories, love and hate are still in your heart. If you really want to cut off the past and let tomorrow continue, you don't have to pester me anymore." The Enchantress of 100 Charms sang this song with great emotion. It was the first time the crowd heard it and they were amazed. Yu Qianqiu unconsciously crossed his arms in front of his chest. He squinted his eyes and mumbled in his heart, "What is she doing? Is she trying to hold a concert?" He turned his head to look at Yan Zixia. Seeing her infatuated face, Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth but he was speechless. He only felt goosebumps all over his body. Ziyi's eyes widened. She subconsciously pulled by Zizong and asked, "What's the name of this song?" "Ah." Bai Zizong came back to his senses. He shook his head and said, "It sounds good, but I've never heard it before. I don't know what it's called. Maybe I'm ignorant. Do you guys know?" He asked Wu Liqing and the other two. The three of them thought hard and shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know. Zi was a little disappointed. She wanted to ask the other side of the river, but she was afraid that she would disturb the other party's performance. She could only listen to the other side of the river quietly until the song ended. After the song ended, the Enchantress of 100 Charms pressed her hands on the strings to stop the lingering sound. She stood on the huge rock with the guqin in her arms. Under the moonlight, even the red veil could not hide her graceful figure. One of her hands gently pulled down the veil that covered half of her face. Her charming face was finally revealed in front of everyone. Those who knew her exclaimed, "The Enchantress of Enchanted Palace. So it's her. I was wondering why she looked so familiar. After the Enchantress of Enchanted Palace was wiped out, didn't she go into hiding? Why is she here to play the guqin?" The crowd whispered to each other in surprise. The Enchantress of 100 Charms looked around and giggled. "I've been hiding for so many years. I didn't expect so many people to recognize me. How rare." Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. She had revealed her identity again. It seemed that she wanted to come out openly. At this moment, a burst of laughter came from behind him. "I was wondering who was in the mood. So it's Palace Master Yi." Yu Qianqiu turned around and saw a group of people standing behind him. They were probably attracted by the sound of the guqin. Dongfang Chang, Ao and Qiu Wuyuan stood side by side. The one who laughed was Qiu Wuyuan. He flashed over the crowd and landed in front of the huge rock across the river. "So it's the leader of 10,000 demons, Elder Qiu." The Enchantress of 100 Charms glanced at him. Her expression was indifferent and a little rude. The enchantment palace was destroyed, but the leader of 10,000 demons did not help. She was a little unhappy. Qiu Wuyuan smiled awkwardly. "Palace Master Yi, I haven't seen you for many years. I didn't expect you to be as powerful as ever. The war of the cultivation world has just begun and we need a master like you to join us." Yu Qianqiu nodded secretly. It was the first time he heard that the Enchantress of 100 Charms' surname was Yi. The enchantment palace is gone. What does the war of the cultivation world have to do with me? I don't want to participate in the war. I'm only here to visit a friend. The Enchantress of 100 Charms bluntly refused and turned to look at Yu Qianqiu. She resumed her charming smile and said, "I have lived in seclusion for many years and am fond of music. By chance, I ran into the composer of the White Fox and the Mandarin Duck and Butterfly Dream, so I asked him for a song. Just now, I played and sang Love Has Become a Thing of the Past. Recently, I suddenly heard that Sir appeared in 100 Flowers Valley again, so I came to pay a visit, hoping to learn another song." Everyone followed her gaze. It was none other than Yu Qianqiu, whose expression was twitching. They were in an uproar. Could it be that he really composed those songs? Bai Zitsong, and the others turned around. They were still in disbelief when they saw it was Yu Qianqiu. Yan Zixia believed it without a doubt because she had seen it with her own eyes. She asked in a low voice, "The song just now was called Love Is Past. Damn it! What was this woman trying to do?" Yu Qianqiu looked around and smiled at the Enchantress of 100 Charms. "Palace Master Yi, you're being too polite. It's just a joke. It's not worth asking for advice. I've come all the way here. Are you going to let me go home disappointed?" The Enchantress of 100 Charms laughed. Although it was a joke, Yu Qianqiu felt that there was a hint of threat in it, which made him very unhappy. He looked at Yan Zixia beside him and thought to himself, "Forget it. I'll just take it as fulfilling my promise to her." He threw out a green flying sword and flew to the Enchantress of 100 Charms. He glared at her. The Enchantress of 100 Charms did not mind. She smiled charmingly and pushed the zither in her hand to him. She then gave way to him and floated to the bottom of the giant rock. Yu Qianqiu held the zither with one hand and looked at Yan Zixia. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Back then, I promised someone that I would compose a song for her. Unfortunately, I've never fulfilled my promise. I'm ashamed that she asked me about it today. I'll just borrow your zither to fulfill my promise." He sat down with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes and pondered for a while. He randomly picked a song from his memory and brewed it. When he opened his eyes, his fingers were already playing the zither skillfully. The clear and refreshing sound of the zither weaved out a beautiful melody, and the people on the other side of the river were immediately stunned. Xiao Wuyuan stared at the fingers that were playing the zither. He realized that it was not an act. His mouth turned into a circle. Bai Zizong and the other three looked at each other. They said that it was impossible just now, but it became a reality in the blink of an eye. Zi's mouth was opened so wide that an egg could be stuffed in it. It was unbelievable. Chapter 406. The temptress turned to the other side of the river, trying to find the person Yu Qianzhou promised, but it was hard to confirm. Others might not understand, but Yan Zixia did. The person Yu Qianzhou was talking about was her. Her beautiful eyes were slightly watery, but fortunately, it was hard for others to see it due to the dim moonlight. The melody was clear, and under the moonlight, it gave off a free and easy feeling. Yu Qianzhou looked around with a calm smile on his face, and echoed the melody. The world of mortals is funny, infatuation is the most boring, arrogance is good. This life is not over, but the heart has no worries, I just want to be free for the rest of my life. Smile to people when awake, forget everything in dreams, sigh that the sky darkens too early. The next life is unpredictable, love and hate are written off, I sing to wine, I only want to be happy until I grow old. The surprise on everyone's faces had turned into an attentive expression. The troubles in their hearts seemed to have dissipated along with the song. They were all immersed in it, and some even swayed left and right involuntarily with the melody. Was this the guy who was filthy and immoral? This guy actually had this side to him. Xiao Wuyuan, who was below, was petrified on the spot with a blank face. Zi, who was on the other side, was completely dumbfounded. Elder Bai's disciple was indeed not an ordinary person. The world of mortals is funny, infatuation is the most boring. Are you talking to me, comforting me? So you have always known my heart. Yan Zixia mumbled as if she was dreaming. The moonlight was dim, the river was flowing, the fireflies were dancing, and the breeze was cool. As he sang and sang, Yu Qianzhou also entered the state of mind. His expression was transcendent, and there was a faint smile on his face as he looked at the fireflies resting on his shoulder. They were singing to their heart's content under the moonlight. He said, no matter how cold the wind is, I don't want to escape. No matter how beautiful the flowers are, I don't want them. The higher the sky, the narrower the heart. No matter how much karma there is, I get drunk alone. I cry today, I laugh tomorrow, I don't expect anyone to understand, I'm full of pride. The song is singing, the dance is dancing, the night is long, and the dawn is looking for happiness. After repeating the catchy melody a few times, everyone had already memorized it. Many people were humming it softly, realizing that this song could relieve their worries. Music will eventually come to an end, and beauty cannot be preserved forever. The music slowly came to an end. Everyone was still immersed in the joy. Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. It seemed that the performance was quite effective. Suddenly, he discovered that the Enchantress of 100 Charms was looking at him with a smile, full of ill intentions. He could not help but frown. Without saying a word, he picked up the zither on his knee and tossed it back to the other party. The Enchantress of Allure caught the zither that was rolling over and gently held it in her arms. Her face was filled with an enchanting smile as she let out a burst of bell-like giggles. She seemed to be very proud, which woke everyone up with a start. When everyone looked at Yu Qianzhou again, their gazes were filled with deep veneration. To be able to improvise such a beautiful and classic song, how many people in the world could do it? He was simply a heaven-sent genius. Xiao Wuyuan smacked his lips and swallowed his saliva. He did not understand music, but he could intuitively tell that it was beautiful. Even a boorish person like him wanted to let go of everything and have a good time after listening to it. It was obvious that this song was extraordinary. TSK TSK. Looking at Yu Qianqiu, he shook his head and exclaimed. This guy was not only good at acting shamelessly and fighting, but he could also play such a gentle song. It was really surprising. What a talent! What a gentle scum! Yu Qianqiu stood up and was about to leave when the Enchantress of 100 Charms asked with a smile, "Mister, are you going to leave like this? A good song needs a good name. Since Mister has left the song, you should at least tell us the name of the song." Everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu and nodded slightly. This thing was not a treasure. It was not like he could eat it if he kept it in his mouth. Without hesitation, Yu Qianqiu said, "Let's call it Xiao Hongchen." Xiao Hongchen? That Xiao Hongchen from Hongchen is so funny. Good name. The Enchantress of 100 Charms' eyes lit up and nodded in praise. Everyone else also whispered to each other. Yu Qianqiu took out a green flying sword from his long sleeve and stepped on it. The Enchantress of 100 Charms carried her zither and followed behind him. Yu Qianqiu looked back and immediately stopped in the air. The Enchantress of 100 Charms also stopped with a smile. "Palace Lord Yi, why are you following me?" Yu Qianqiu was surprised. The Enchantress of 100 Charms plucked the zither in her arms with a few fingers. After a few tinkles, she smiled and said, "Of course, to go back with Mister and continue to learn from you." It's too late. It's not convenient. Let's talk about it another day. Yu Qianqiu looked at the people below and said with a twitching face. The Enchantress of 100 Charms giggled and said, "Late? It's better if it's late. No one will disturb us in the dead of night. It's a good time to learn from you." Yu Qianqiu's body swayed and he almost fell off the sword. He looked at her translucent clothes and thought, "Masteress, you're playing with me. There are so many people below, and you dare to say such obscure words. What will others think if you go back with me dressed like this?" Everyone below looked at each other in dismay. The Enchantress of 100 Charms was famous for her charm. Although no one had seen her affairs with their own eyes, her dissolute reputation had long been widely known in the cultivation world. Now, this scum was suitable for a slut, everyone thought so. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu didn't know what the people below were thinking. Otherwise, he would have to summon the special forces and start a massacre. "Brat, you destroyed my pavilion. I haven't settled the score with you yet, and you refuse to show me." The Enchantress of 100 Charms was smiling on the surface, but she was secretly threatening him with telepathy. Yu Qianqiu's face froze. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. His cultivation was not high enough, so he couldn't explain with telepathy. The two of them were in a stalemate in the air for a while. In the end, Yu Qianqiu gave way and flew into the 100 Flowers Valley dejectedly. The Enchantress of 100 Charms giggled and followed him. The next life is unpredictable. Love and hate are written off. Is this what you want to tell me? Yan Zixia, who was below, turned around in a daze and was still murmuring. Once this woman started to let her imagination run wild, anything could fit the situation. Even 10 bulls couldn't pull her back. No, 10,000 bulls couldn't pull her back. After watching the show, the crowd left happily. They couldn't help but sigh. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to have such a trick up his sleeve. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Miss C.E. Wu Liqing passed her another incense stick and said, "There are still many fireworks left. Let's continue." Yes, let's continue." Bai Zitsong and the other two agreed. They immediately took out fireworks from their storage pouches and started to place them on the ground. Ze took the incense stick and lit a fuse. She watched as a ray of light shot into the sky and exploded. Although the colors were still beautiful, she didn't have the mood to start. Her lips were slightly pouting, showing a lack of interest. She looked at the 4 men who were placing the fireworks. She couldn't help but compare them with Yu Qianzhou. Then she frowned and thought, as expected of the disciples of the aristocratic families. They only know how to play all day and follow behind women. What a loser. It seems that when I was with him, I was always behind him. He was busy all day, and I rarely saw him stop. I was fine with him. Why would I hang out with these vulgar people and play with children's things? So vulgar. Damn it. I've been with him for so long. He never told me that he knows how to play the guqin and compose music. Liar. Ziyi's pretty face turned cold. She threw the incense stick on the ground and turned to leave. Miss Ziyi, where are you going? There are many fireworks here. Bai Zitsong shouted. The other 3 were stunned. You guys play. I'm going back. Ziyi said without turning her head. We'll go with you. The 4 of them said in unison. Ziyi's face darkened. She turned around and shouted, Don't follow me. Then she left quickly. The 4 of them watched her figure disappear under the moonlight. When they came back to their senses, they couldn't help but look at each other. They didn't know why Ziyi suddenly lost her temper. They didn't know what Ziyi was thinking. If they knew, they would definitely shout that they were innocent. It's not that you wanted to play. Who would play with a cultivator? We're playing with you, but you're saying that we're vulgar. What happened? Did someone make her angry? Tan Fei was shocked. Wu Licheng shook his head. Who dared to make her angry? Maybe she's tired of playing with them. Sigh. A woman's heart is so hard to understand. Beautiful women are even more so. Looks like we need to find something new. Bai Zitsong nodded in agreement. Jingzhou pointed at the fireworks on the ground. What about these? I still have a lot in my storage bag. It's not a good thing to keep these things in my storage bag. They could turn into explosives if something goes wrong. What else can we do? She asked us to play, so we'll play. Who knows what she's thinking? This woman is like a kid. Maybe she'll come back when she's interested. Wu Licheng squatted on the ground and lit up a bunch. Whoosh! Bang! The fireworks rose into the sky. The other 3 looked at each other and lit some incense as well. The 4 of them played until midnight. When they thought that Ziyi wouldn't come back, they were so angry that they poured the rest of the fireworks in their storage bags into the river. On the other side, Yu Qianzhou and 100 Charms Beauty had just arrived at 100 Flowers' house. When they heard the fireworks exploding again, they only looked back. After entering, Yu Qianzhou knocked on the counter and said, Shopkeeper, prepare another empty room for me. Just as the shopkeeper nodded, 100 Charms Beauty smiled and said, There's no need. Yu Qianzhou turned around happily and said, Palace Master Yi, do you have something to do and have to leave? Do you want me to send you off? He was really afraid of her. It would be great if he could send her off. Who knew that as soon as he finished speaking, the 100 Charm Enchantress would secretly stretch out a sharp index finger and directly poke his waist, causing him to grimace in pain. What? Do you want to chase me away? 100 Charms Beauty smiled and said. No, you misunderstood. Yu Qianzhou clenched his teeth and said. 100 Charms Beauty looked up and nodded. That's good. I have something to talk to you about. Bring me to your room. That's not very convenient. Hiss. Just as Yu Qianzhou opened his mouth, he felt another sharp pain on his waist. He didn't dare to say anything else and quickly went upstairs. 100 Charms Beauty nodded and smiled at the shopkeeper. Then, she followed Yu Qianzhou. The shopkeeper felt his bones become lighter. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.